Summer 1984, at the college entrance exam registration site. Stella Sterling stared at the bright red slogan painted on the wall: "Strive for university today, contribute to national research tomorrow." It confirmed, once again, that she had truly been reborn 40 years in the past. The lively brick classroom buzzed with students crowded around the worn lectern, filling out registration forms. Only Stella Sterling was being advised by her teacher, Miss Willow. "Miss Sterling, are you sure you don't want to register for the college entrance exams, all for the sake of marrying Captain Graham?" The kind words jolted Stella's soul awake. She gripped Miss Willow's hand tightly. "No, I want to register for the exams. You're right. Educated people like us shouldn't get lost in romance. We should be contributing to our nation's progress." Given a second chance, she would never again marry her Uncle Gordon Graham. Nor would she waste her life on a man who didn't love her. Good, good. I'm relieved you've thought it through. Prepare well these next 2 months. You're my most prized student. I'll be waiting for the good news of your university acceptance. After filling out the college entrance exam registration form and walking out of the school, Stella looked at the streets filled with people in blue work clothes, riding sturdy, old-fashioned bicycles. Only then did the reality of her rebirth sink in. She raised a hand to shield her eyes from the sun and laughed out loud. It felt so good. This life, she would live it wonderfully for herself. Walking back to the military family housing, she saw a military jeep parked by the sentry post from a distance. She immediately recognized Gordon Graham, standing tall and straight in his combat uniform. The tall man had a short, spiky crew cut, looking handsome and tough. The youngest son of Commander Graham, the most decorated battalion commander in the capital. With an icy, reserved demeanor, any one of these traits would make people turn their heads. In her past life, living day in and day out with such a man, it was inevitable for her young heart to be moved. Just as she was thinking this, Gordon Graham's sharp gaze pierced through her. Before she could speak, the man strode over with a grim face, his large hand gripping her arm. "Come inside with me." Stella barely had time to react before she was dragged into the bedroom. Then, Gordon Graham pulled a stack of letters from his pocket and slammed them onto the mahogany desk. "When you confessed at 17, I warned you to get over this misguided crush you have on me. How dare you send love letters to the base? Did you think that would force me to marry you? Have I been too good to you? Is that why you still haven't given up?" Stella froze. Before she was 17, Gordon Graham had indeed been exceptionally good to her. He was the one who brought her, an orphan, back from the war memorial to the Graham family. He, who was naturally cold to others, was uniquely gentle with her, giving her whatever she asked for. Across 2 lifetimes, Stella looked at the furious man and for the first time sincerely admitted her mistake. "Uncle Gordon, I'm sorry." Gordon Graham's angry expression faltered for a moment. He hadn't expected Stella, who had been stubborn for 2 years, to suddenly yield. But then he saw Stella slowly bend down, pick up the love letters, and one by one, rip all the letters addressed to Gordon to shreds right in front of him. Under Gordon Graham's astonished gaze, she threw the scraps of paper into the trash can and pledged, with sincerity and resolve, "Don't worry. In this life, I will never think of marrying you again." Because she would personally sever all ties with him. Gordon Graham studied Stella intently for a few seconds. He didn't seem to believe her words, but his expression softened considerably. "It's good that you can think this way. Your life is just beginning. What kind of life can you have just clinging to me? And don't think about whining to my father anymore. Even if he pressures me, I won't marry you." Stella paused for a moment. Grandpa Graham and her maternal grandfather were comrades in arms, and he had always been very good to her. In her previous life, she had indeed begged Grandpa Graham to force Gordon to marry her. She thought it was the beginning of happiness, but what greeted her was a lifetime of cold neglect. So in this life, she gave Gordon Graham the answer he wanted. "Uncle Gordon, rest assured, I'll keep my word this time. I won't pester you anymore." Her obedience finally made Gordon Graham nod. Only after he left did Stella look around the familiar, yet alien bedroom. The radio on the desk, the creamy milk candies in the drawer, the vintage camera on the bedside table, almost everything bore Gordon Graham's shadow. Stella packed these things into a cabinet, leaving only her college entrance exam textbooks on the desk. She meant what she said. From this day on, the Stella Sterling who loved Gordon Graham was thoroughly dead. In this life, she would, as Miss Willow encouraged, answer the nation's call, strive to get into the National Defense University, advance defense technology, and contribute to protecting her country for the next month. Stella left early and returned late every day, rededicating herself to her studies, practically sleeping in the classroom. She lost a significant amount of weight. One evening, after finishing the last practice exam, she headed home, her stomach growling with hunger. The compound was silent. The clock struck 11. Stella had just taken a bite of cold leftovers when Gordon Graham, whom she hadn't seen for a month, suddenly came home. "Uncle Gordon." Stella instinctively put down her chopsticks. Gordon Graham glanced at the wall clock, then at the unheated food on Stella's table, and his face immediately turned cold. "Not eating properly, what are you messing around for? If your health collapses, who's going to care?" The mouthful of cold rice she hadn't swallowed, yet stuck in her throat, choking her so she couldn't speak. She wasn't deliberately torturing herself to make him feel sorry for her. No one knew better than her that Gordon Graham had long stopped caring about her. And after scolding her, Gordon Graham went upstairs by himself, indifferent to whether Stella was uncomfortable or not. She sat down and continued to eat. The hard, dry grains of rice scratched her throat, causing a slight pain. A sense of desolation, of living under someone else's roof, suddenly welled up in her heart. After Gordon Graham stopped welcoming her, the Graham household no longer had that feeling of a home, that ease and warmth. Fortunately, she could leave after the college entrance exams. Soon, the countdown to the college entrance exams reached 20 days. To encourage everyone, the school organized a pep rally and took all the students to visit a military camp on the outskirts of the city. Stella followed Miss Willow to the base, but didn't wander around curiously like the other students. She had been to this place countless times in 2 lifetimes. With this time, she might as well find a place to do another set of math problems. She left the crowd, looking for a place to sit. Unexpectedly, as she rounded a corner, she ran into Gordon Graham. Their eyes met, and the man's face instantly darkened. He berated her without preamble. "Have you forgotten what you said? Running to the military base again, using the old man's name? Is this how you study for university?" But if he had just looked a little closer, he would have known that many students had come to the base today, and that Stella hadn't sought him out intentionally. Stella didn't explain, only saying, "I'm sorry, Uncle Gordon, I'll leave now." With that, she turned to leave, clutching her books and papers. Unexpectedly, Gordon Graham stopped her. "Wait for me at the gate." His tone was like a command, as if Stella deserved only such cold treatment. Stella said nothing and obediently walked to the gate. Just as she was wondering what Gordon Graham meant by keeping her there, she saw him walking towards her with a young woman in a white floral dress. The moment she saw the woman's face, Stella froze. Lydia Brighton, Gordon Graham's junior from university. In her previous life, Lydia Brighton never married but had a pair of adorable fraternal twins. Stella had been married to Gordon Graham her whole life, but was childless. Only before she died did Stella learn that Lydia's children were Gordon's. No wonder Gordon Graham took such good care of the children, personally taking them to the hospital when they were sick or coughing, and even acknowledging them as his godchildren. So, Gordon Graham refused to accept her not only because of their generational difference, but also because she had taken the place of the woman he loved. While she was stunned, Gordon Graham had already brought the woman to her. He introduced them coolly. "Stella, this is Lydia Brighton. Think of her as your future aunt." So they had gotten together this early? "Stella, what are you looking at, all dazed?" Lydia Brighton's sweet smile interrupted Stella's thoughts. Stella glanced at their intimately clasped hands and felt as if everything from her past life was like dust in the wind. Then, she smiled faintly. "Yes, you two look very well matched." Stella didn't know what Gordon Graham was thinking, bringing her along on a date with Lydia Brighton. Inside the general store, Gordon Graham and Lydia Brighton chatted and laughed. Stella followed behind them, quietly being an invisible presence. Passing by the popsicle freezer, Lydia Brighton suddenly said, "Gordon, it's so hot. Buy me a popsicle to cool down." Stella looked over. Beside the old-fashioned insulated popsicle cooler covered with a quilt, a few children were drooling, pressed against it. But Gordon Graham refused. "You kicked off your blanket last night and caught a cold. You can't have ice cream today." Stella's hand unconsciously clenched her dress. Last night, they were together. She looked up and could see the corners of Gordon Graham's lips curved upwards, with a long absent warmth and doting affection, but it wasn't for her. Perhaps her gaze was too direct. Gordon Graham suddenly turned his head and glanced at her, his smile vanishing. "You can't have any either." Stella lowered her head, flustered, and murmured a soft Before, whatever she wanted, Gordon Graham would bring it to her immediately. Whatever she wanted to eat, he would buy it for her, even in the middle of the night. Only when she craved something during her period would he pat her head and refuse with a smile. But now, he only had a cold face for her. They walked around the general store. Gordon Graham's hands were soon filled with more than a dozen shopping bags, large and small. Face cream, a pretty dress, a lady's watch, whatever Lydia Brighton tried on, Gordon Graham bought, earning praise from the sales clerk for how good they were together. If it were the past, Stella wouldn't have been able to bear hearing this. She would have cried and made a scene, shouting that Gordon Graham was her man. But now, Stella remained quiet and well-behaved throughout. Until they passed the candy section, Gordon Graham seemed to suddenly remember Stella and looked back at her. Then he said, "Comrade, get me a tin of milk candies." Unexpectedly, before he finished speaking, Lydia Brighton interjected with a smile. "I used to like this candy in high school. I didn't expect you to remember after all these years. But I don't eat it anymore. Too much of this candy makes my teeth hurt, and it's really uncomfortable when they ache." After speaking, Lydia Brighton affectionately took Gordon Graham's arm, and they continued walking. Stella, however, stood frozen, staring blankly at the tin of candy. She loved sweets. Before, whenever she cried, Gordon Graham would magically pull out creamy milk candies from his pocket and feed them to her, coaxing her to be happy. She had thought the creamy milk candies were proof that Gordon Graham cared about her, that he liked her. In the end, she had merely benefited from Lydia's preference. Even though she had started over, even though she had decided not to cling to Gordon Graham in this life, her heart still ached unbearably at this moment. Stella clenched her hands and finally spoke, "Uncle Gordon, I'm tired. I'm heading back first." Gordon Graham turned around. He didn't walk over to her, merely nodding faintly. "Go back and rest for a while. Remember to study hard. I remember when you were little, you aspired to get into Stanford. Your Aunt Lydia is doing her doctorate at Stanford. When you get in, you'll be our junior. We'll give you a satisfactory graduation gift." But now, Stella no longer wanted to go to Stanford. When she was a child, she didn't understand anything about the future. She just thought Gordon Graham was a Stanford student, that Gordon Graham was impressive, so Stanford must be the best university. Besides, Stanford was in California, close to the capital and close to Gordon Graham's base. She just wanted to follow in his footsteps, to stick by his side. But now, she wanted to go to the National Defense University. She wanted to do her part for her country, for the people. But there was no need to tell Gordon Graham any of this. After saying goodbye, Stella quickly returned home. The first thing she did was to find the tin of creamy milk candies she had put away in the cabinet. The candy tin was a bit old, the colorful rabbit on it slightly faded. Gordon Graham had given it to her before her confession at 17. For 2 years, she hadn't been able to bring herself to eat them. The expiration date had long passed. The candy wrappers were yellowed and stuck to the melted candies. Stella struggled to unwrap one and put it in her mouth, but the warm, sweet, milky fragrance from her memory was gone. Traces of bitterness spread between her lips and teeth. She frowned and spat it out. Expired candy indeed shouldn't be kept. Expired warmth, too, should not be indulged in nor mourned. She carried the candy tin downstairs, intending to throw it away. Who knew she would run into Gordon Graham, returning at the main gate? He glanced at the candy tin in her hand, but didn't recognize it as the one he had given her. Instead, he said, "Eat less candy. It's bad for your teeth." Hearing this, Stella inexplicably smiled, a stuffy feeling in her chest she couldn't quite place. Then, right in front of Gordon Graham, she threw the candy into the trash can. "Got it. I won't eat it anymore." After throwing away the creamy milk candies, Stella felt as if a shackle had been cast off. She delved into her textbooks with even more effort, preparing for the college entrance exams with all her energy. During this time, Gordon Graham didn't avoid her by staying in the base dormitory as before. He came back every day after training. Not only did he come back, but sometimes he also brought Lydia Brighton over for dinner. In just over half a month, All the elderly and children in the compound knew that Lydia Brighton was Gordon Graham's fiancée. When they saw them, they would joke about wanting wedding candy. Soon, it was the night before the college entrance exams. At dinner, Gordon Graham again brought Lydia Brighton to the dining table, sitting in the seat that once belonged to Stella. Stella said nothing, chose a seat furthest from Gordon Graham, and quietly ate her meal. But Lydia Brighton suddenly turned the conversation to Stella. "Stella, once you get into Stanford, you'll be old enough to start dating. As your aunt-to-be, even though I'm a few years ahead of you, I can still look out for you at school. What kind of boys do you like? Just tell me, and I'll help introduce you." Hearing this, Gordon Graham also looked over, his gaze obscure. Stella put down her chopsticks. She understood that Lydia was saying this because she was afraid Stella would continue to pester Gordon Graham in the future. But neither of them knew that she was actually applying to the National Defense University. Stanford and the National Defense University were in different parts of the country, one on the West Coast, the other far south. Once she was admitted to the National Defense University, unless she deliberately came back to see Gordon Graham, they would never meet again in this lifetime. Lydia's reminder was entirely unnecessary. Stella smiled faintly, her voice soft, her tone peaceful yet sincere. "Thank you, but there's no need. I just want to focus on my studies right now." As she finished speaking, the sound of a car horn came from outside, followed by orderly Miles shouting, "Commander Graham SR is back." Stella's eyes lit up. Since her rebirth, Grandpa Graham had been away on inspections, and she hadn't seen him yet. She hurried out and saw the spirited old man getting out of the car, holding a festive red gift package. "Grandpa Graham, Stell girl, come quickly, Grandpa brought you a gift to cheer you on for your exams." Stella's eyes welled up. Just as she was about to go over, she heard two bangs. Fireworks bloomed one by one in a corner of the courtyard, illuminating the entire night sky with their brilliant display. Everyone instinctively looked up at the sky. Commander Graham SR nodded in satisfaction and patted Gordon Graham's shoulder. "Not bad, you thought of the same thing I did. You remembered Stella likes fireworks and prepared a gift to encourage her." Gordon Graham glanced at Stella, then took Lydia Brighton's hand and walked up to Commander Graham SR. "Dad, this is Lydia Brighton, your future daughter-in-law. Today is Lydia's birthday. The fireworks were specially prepared for her." Commander Graham SR was slightly stunned. His gaze swept past Lydia Brighton and landed worriedly on Stella. Stella remained standing there, still smiling, but her nose tingled because of Grandpa Graham's concern. Grandpa Graham was the only person in the world who supported her, right or wrong, and was good to her. Unfortunately, in her past life, she had indulged in romance and failed to live up to his patriotic teachings. The fireworks ended in an eerie silence. Stella was the first to break the stiffness. "The fireworks were beautiful. Grandpa, Uncle Gordon, you two chat. I have exams tomorrow, so I'll go upstairs to bed first." All right, rest well tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'll have your Uncle Gordon drive you to the exam center." Without waiting for Gordon Graham's reaction, Stella went upstairs. Her mind was clear, and she slept soundly all night. The next day, the college entrance exams began. The sky, which had been clear the night before, was now pouring rain. But when Stella opened the passenger door of the car, she saw Lydia Brighton sitting inside. Gordon Graham rarely explained himself, but he offered, "Lydia needs to go to Stanford for an urgent seminar. It's on the way to your exam center, so I'll take you both." Stella silently got into the back seat. She had always been prone to car sickness, and it would give her a headache for the whole day. Gordon Graham clearly knew all this. It was raining outside, so they couldn't open the windows. Stella closed her eyes, silently counting the time, pinching her palm to fight the nausea rising in her stomach. Suddenly, Lydia Brighton cried out, "Oh no, I forgot my documents, Gordon. What do I do? Without these documents, the seminar can't proceed." Stella's heart tightened. She opened her eyes and looked at Gordon Graham. She saw him frown, glance at his watch, then pick up an umbrella and hand it to her. "The exam center is just across the street, after this intersection. There's still an hour before the exam starts. You have plenty of time to walk there." Gordon Graham always meant what he said. Even though Stella felt extremely unwell, she took the umbrella and got out of the car. She had to get to the exam site on time, or she would be disqualified. The rain outside was heavy, and the wind was strong. Rain hammered against the umbrella, blurring her vision beyond 5 paces. The Jeep quickly turned around and disappeared. Stella clutched her exam bag tightly and fumbled forward. The further she walked, the more her eyelids twitched. Suddenly, she heard a roar, "Young lady, get out of the way, the road ahead has collapsed." The road's collapsed, you can't get through. Stella was pulled back by a kind passerby. The next second, the earth shook violently. Stella threw down her umbrella and ran, tightly clutching the small bag containing her admission ticket to her chest. After the road collapsed, a large pit, dozens of meters deep, had formed. Stella could only take a detour to the exam center. The original distance of less than 200 meters now required her to run halfway across the city. Time ticked by minute. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, the countdown had begun. Her heartbeat resonated with the thunder. Ding-ling-ling, dear 1984 college entrance exam candidates, the exam is about to begin. The examination hall gates will be closed. Please check your examination stationery and wait for the invigilators to distribute the test papers. The announcement pierced through the dense rain fog, striking Stella's heart like a tolling bell. Her foot slipped, and she stumbled and scrambled to the exam hall gate. "Student, why are you so late? Get in quickly, 1 more minute, and you'll be disqualified." From morning till night, the students, under the nation's flag, in the brick classrooms adorned with inspirational quotes, wielded their pens and answered questions. At 7 in the evening, the bell rang. The college entrance exam was over. Pens down, papers submitted. The tension Stella had been holding finally eased. The mud and water on her clothes had dried, and the dirt on her face concealed an unnatural flush. Her ears buzzed with a dull roar. She forced herself to walk out of the exam hall, but at the main gate, her vision went black and she collapsed. In her hazy consciousness, she vaguely heard Grandpa Graham's angry shouts. "Didn't I tell you to take her to the exam hall? Is this how you took her? If anything happens to Stella, how will I face my old comrade in the afterlife? Gordon Graham, don't forget, you personally brought this little girl back from the war memorial. You swore you'd be good to her for life." Stella struggled to open her eyes, but her eyelids grew heavier and heavier. Gradually, she couldn't even hear Gordon Graham's excuses clearly. When she woke up again, only Gordon Graham was in the room. Seeing her awake, he quickly got up, touched her forehead, and asked in a low voice, "You're awake. Are you still uncomfortable anywhere? Are you hungry? Do you want some water?" The series of questions made Stella feel a bit dazed. She stared blankly at Gordon Graham. The man before her seemed to have transformed back into the Captain Graham who used to dote on her, who allowed her to call him brother despite their supposed generational gap. The next second, as their eyes met, the worry in Gordon Graham's eyes suddenly dissipated. He withdrew his hand, sat back down, and resumed his distant demeanor. "Don't overthink it. Dad ordered me to take care of you." Stella, coming back to her senses, still managed a smile. "I know. Thank you for your trouble, Uncle Gordon." She had expected this. During the 3 days she spent recuperating, Stella and Gordon Graham were inseparable. But the words they exchanged totaled less than 10 sentences. After she recovered, Gordon Graham was recalled by the military and went on a mission. The next day, Stella personally cut off her waist-length hair, which she had grown for several years, and pleaded with Commander Graham Sr. to train her. The National Defense University required not only knowledge, but also a strong physique. Although her results weren't out yet, she was sure she could get in. 10 days later, Stella was running around the compound with sandbags tied to her legs when she unexpectedly encountered Gordon Graham returning home from his mission. He sized her up and walked over in surprise. "Why did you cut your hair?" Stella stopped, casually wiped the sweat from her forehead and fudged, "It's hot. This is cooler." That made sense. Gordon Graham, for some reason, stared at her intently, blocking the doorway without moving aside. Stella was puzzled. Just then, Commander Graham Sr. walked out of the house, saw them, and chuckled, instructing, "Gordon, you're back just in time. The exams are over and Stella has recovered. When you have time, take her out more often. Grandpa, let's not trouble Uncle Gordon." "Okay." Their voices sounded at the same time. Before Stella could clearly see Gordon Graham's expression, she was pulled into the Jeep. Regardless of whether she liked it or not, he drove her directly to Stanford University. Seeing Lydia Brighton waiting at the university gate, Stella understood. His willingness to take her out was an excuse. The main point was to see Lydia brighten. This time, Stella had no interest in watching them display their affection. She made an excuse and went to the Stanford library. Stanford truly lived up to its reputation as a prestigious institution of higher learning. It had all sorts of books. Stella randomly picked up a journal introducing the National Defense University and became engrossed, forgetting the time. "Why are you reading the introduction to this university?" "Nothing, just browsing," Stella lied casually. Even when Gordon Graham reached out, took the book from her hand, and stared at her with a scrutinizing gaze, her expression didn't change. "When did you become interested in the National Defense University? You've never been able to endure hardship since you were little. Do you still want to be a soldier?" Before Stella could find an excuse to answer, Lydia Brighton trotted over and grabbed Gordon Graham's arm. "Gordon, I squeezed out too much hand cream. Let me share some with you." On a hot day, Lydia Brighton rubbed greasy hand cream all over the man's hands. In the past, Stella had also wanted to apply hand cream for Gordon Graham, just like Lydia. She liked gardenia-scented hand cream and wanted him to carry the same scent as her. At that time, Gordon Graham had refused outright, saying he couldn't stand such soft, unmanly behavior. But now, he just smiled at Lydia Brighton, having already forgotten his questioning of Stella. Stella was glad for the reprieve. The three of them wandered around until the afternoon before leaving Stanford. During that time, Stella, thinking she needed to pick up her university application preference form from her school, separated from Gordon Graham and Lydia. She returned to the compound in the evening. Stella went straight to the study to find Grandpa Graham, wanting to ask about the details of filling out the form. Unexpectedly, she heard a conversation between Grandpa Graham and Gordon Graham from inside. "Gordon, be a little nicer to Stella. The girl is sensitive but stubborn. Don't wait until she really doesn't want you anymore, then you'll have nowhere to cry." Stella's hand, about to knock, paused. Then, Gordon Graham's helpless tone drifted out. "Dad, just stop trying to play matchmaker. I have no romantic feelings for Stella whatsoever. The one I like is Lydia Brighton." Stella had heard such words for 2 lifetimes. Hearing them again now, she no longer felt the initial sadness. Stella went straight back to her room. Unfolding the university application preference form in her hand, she uncapped her pen, stared at the first, second, and third choices on the paper, and then filled in National Defense University for all of them. She thought leaving Gordon Graham was probably the most correct decision she had made since her rebirth. The next day, Stella came downstairs for breakfast and saw Grandpa Graham and Gordon Graham already seated at the table. "Stella's here. You've filled out your preference form, right? Later, have Gordon drive you to school to submit it, and by the way, buy the things you'll need for when university starts. Get prepared in advance." Gordon Graham, holding his chopsticks, agreed as if completing a task. "Got it." During breakfast, Stella only managed a couple of bites. She hadn't planned on buying anything. The National Defense University was over 1,500 kilometers from the capital. Traveling alone, too much luggage would be inconvenient. After getting into the car, Stella consciously sat in the back seat. Gordon Graham frowned and glanced back. He opened his mouth but only managed to ask, "Did you put Stanford for all 3 of your choices?" Hearing this, Stella lightly hummed in affirmation. Unexpectedly, Gordon Graham's expression turned sour. "For the college entrance exams now, you fill in your preferences before the scores are out. What if your score isn't high enough for Stanford? You won't have a university to go to. Take out your preference form, I'll help you change it." Stella couldn't help but clutch her document bag tighter, not wanting Gordon Graham to see that she had filled in National Defense University. If Gordon Graham knew, Grandpa Graham would know. A big reason Grandpa Graham forced Gordon to marry her in the previous life was that he thought he could keep her by his side and take good care of her. If Grandpa Graham knew she had applied to the National Defense University, thousands of kilometers away, he would definitely worry. Once she was enrolled and it was a done deal, she would be a qualified soldier. Then Grandpa Graham could also rest assured. So Stella declined Gordon Graham's well-intentioned offer. "No need, I have confidence in myself. Uncle Gordon, you can drive." After that, Gordon Graham remained silent with a cold face. They drove to the school in silence. Soon, Stella came out after submitting her preference form. This time, Lydia Brighton was beside Gordon Graham. She wasn't surprised. "Stella, Gordon said he was taking you shopping today. As your aunt-to-be, how could I not come? He's a man, what does he know about us girls things? But I've made an appointment at the photo studio. Can we go take pictures first and then buy your things?" Stella nodded. Either way is fine with me. But only when she got to the photo studio did she realize that Lydia Brighton and Gordon Graham were taking wedding photos. Inside the photo studio, Lydia Brighton changed into a bright red dress, intimately holding Gordon Graham's arm, and smiled at Stella. "Stella, your uncle specially chose this dress for today. Isn't it beautiful?" The staff at the photo studio rushed to answer. "Beautiful, beautiful you too. The bride and groom are so handsome and pretty. You're the most well-matched newlywed couple I've ever photographed. Your future sons and daughters will definitely be good-looking." Lydia Brighton smiled shyly at Gordon Graham. "I'd like to have a son who looks like you. What about you? Do you hope for a son or a daughter in the future?" Gordon Graham smiled faintly and answered seriously, "I like both sons and daughters." Stella leaned against the wall, quietly watching them fantasize about the future. It wasn't exactly a fantasy, though. After all, in her previous life, Lydia Brighton did give Gordon Graham a pair of fraternal twins. A son and a daughter, quite good. After leaving the photo studio, Gordon Graham, as promised, took Stella to the general store to buy university supplies. By the time they finished and returned to the compound, it was already evening. After dropping Stella off, Gordon Graham hurriedly drove away again. Stella lay exhausted on her bed, and somehow, she suddenly dreamed of the day she died in her previous life. At that time, she was already very ill, but she still dragged her sick body to cook a large table of Gordon Graham's favorite dishes because that day was the anniversary of his enlistment. Back then, when she was first brought to the Graham family, she was sensitive and insecure. The children in the compound laughed at her, calling her a good-for-nothing freeloader, a pitiable wretch no one wanted. She hid and cried. It was Gordon Graham who comforted her, asking her to organize an enlistment anniversary celebration for him. He told her he needed her, that she was very useful, and certainly not unwanted. Later, every year on his enlistment anniversary, he would return to the compound, and she would look forward to it, eagerly preparing different surprises for him. Even when he later despised her, she still persisted. Until the day she died in the morning, Stella woke up. Seeing the dried tear tracks on her face in the mirror, her heart felt surprisingly light. It was as if she had completely broken free from some shackle. She thought that last night's tears were probably her subconscious allowing herself to bid a final farewell to her past life. Goodbye, Stella Sterling of the past life. This time, she only hoped to strive to serve her country, to build a career in scientific research, and to make achievements. In the following days, Stella threw herself into physical training again. In just over 10 days, the once soft her had actually developed a few abdominal muscles. The college entrance exam results also came out soon. Stella scored nearly 30 points above the cutoff for Stanford and was practically guaranteed admission to the National Defense University. Taking advantage of the fact that both Grandpa Graham and Gordon Graham were not at home, she gradually mailed her clothes, books, and other university necessities to the National Defense University. In just 3 days, the once full bedroom became empty. Only a large cardboard box was placed next to the desk, containing the things Gordon Graham had given her over the years. The radio, the vintage camera, the first-class merit medal Gordon Graham had given her, she didn't plan to take any of them. They would stay in this room, let Gordon Graham decide what to do with them later. Perhaps it was because she felt lighter, but Stella had a good appetite that night. Feeling inspired, she went to the kitchen and cooked a few extra dishes. As she brought the last dish, a savory eggplant stir-fry, out of the kitchen, she happened to meet Gordon Graham, who had just returned. He glanced at the large spread of food on the table, rubbing his temples with a look of utter helplessness. "Didn't I tell you? You don't need to celebrate my enlistment anniversary for me anymore. I don't have time for such trivial events." Stella stared blankly and glanced up at the calendar. What a coincidence, today was indeed Gordon Graham's enlistment anniversary. She felt a bit awkward. "I prepared this for myself." But Gordon Graham clearly didn't believe her. He hurried into the house and then hurried out, leaving with a parting shot. "I'm taking your Aunt Lydia out on an errand. I won't be back before you leave for university." Beep beep, The jeep started quickly and disappeared into the night. Stella smiled, sat down alone, and ate mouthful after mouthful. Gordon Graham still didn't believe she wouldn't pester him. It didn't matter. Soon he would understand that she was telling the truth. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was mid-August. The acceptance letter from the National Defense University also arrived. Miss Willow personally delivered the letter to Stella. "Congratulations, Miss Sterling. You are the only student from our school to be admitted to the National Defense University. According to the National Defense University's enrollment requirements, you have to leave tomorrow. The train ticket is for 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Keep it safe." Before leaving, Miss Willow added with a smile, "Tonight, be sure to say a proper goodbye to Commander Graham SR. And Captain Graham, they've taken good care of you all these years. I remember there was a time when you couldn't eat anything, and Captain Graham rushed back and forth between the military camp and the school every day, just to make sure you ate, afraid you'd get too thin." Stella held the acceptance letter with its striking military insignia and smiled calmly. "Okay, Miss Willow. When Grandpa Graham and Uncle Gordon return, I will say a proper goodbye to them." She didn't say that Grandpa Graham was away on inspection and Gordon Graham was out with Lydia Brighton. Neither of them would be back tonight. Returning to her bedroom, Stella carefully placed the acceptance letter in her bag. Then she sat down at her desk, pulled out a sheet of letter paper, and wrote a farewell. That night, Stella slept very well. At 7 a.m., she woke up according to her usual biological clock. After washing up, thinking it was still early and that it would be difficult for her to return once she left, she took out her bedsheets and blanket to wash them downstairs. Who knew that just as she was about to go down the stairs, she encountered orderly Miles, also carrying bed linens, about to enter Gordon Graham's room. Seeing her looking, he smiled and proactively explained, "This set of bright red wedding linens Captain Graham specifically ordered to be changed. He'll be back in 2 days." Bright red wedding linens. It seemed Gordon Graham was going to marry Lydia Brighton. Not surprising, since they had already taken their wedding photos. Stella smiled and calmly went downstairs to wash the bedsheets. After finishing, it was already 8:30, an hour and a half left before she had to board the train. Stella went upstairs, ready to take her luggage and leave. Who knew that at the corner into her room, she again encountered orderly Miles coming out with a large pile of things. Clack! A familiar gardenia-scented hand cream fell to the floor. Stella bent down, picked it up, and handed it over. Orderly Miles didn't take it. "Just throw it in the trash can. These are all things Captain Graham ordered to be thrown away. The hand cream in your hand expired 2 years ago." "Okay." Stella casually tossed the hand cream into the pile and went upstairs. Before picking up her bag and leaving, she took one last, careful look at the room she had lived in for 2 lifetimes. Her gaze finally landed on a photograph pressed under the glass of the desk. The photo was of her at 17 and Gordon Graham at 22. It was also the only photo they had together. "I'm leaving anyway. No point in keeping this photo to annoy people." She pulled out the photo, tore it neatly, left Gordon Graham's half on the desk, right next to the farewell letter. Then she turned and left. She walked far away, never looking back. 2 days later, on the way back to the compound, the closer they got to home, the happier Commander Graham SR felt. He couldn't help but turn his head to chat with Gordon Graham, who was driving. Stella should have received her acceptance letter from Stanford by now, right? That child is truly remarkable. Not only did she get into Stanford, but she also exceeded the score by nearly 30 points. If anyone from the Yee family were still alive, they'd be overjoyed. A rare smile also appeared on Gordon Graham's face. Stella has always been very smart. As long as she doesn't go astray, she'll succeed in whatever she wants to do. You boy, so cold to her face, but you don't hold back on praise behind her back. I told you to stay home and wait for the acceptance letter with Stella, but you ran off. Then you turned around and asked me about Stella's situation. What are you after? Commander Graham SR wagged his finger at Gordon Graham from a distance. The top priority when we get back is to throw a big celebration for Stella's university acceptance. Let the girl be happy for a while. You better be nice to her. This time, Gordon Graham didn't refuse. Got it, Dad. He even sped up, and soon the car entered the compound. After getting out of the car, Commander Graham SR called out twice, "Stella, Stella, Grandpa's back." No one answered. The little head that used to peek out from the second floor upon hearing the sound of car wheels did not appear. Strange, did she go out to play? Commander Graham SR frowned but didn't think much of it. But Gordon Graham, standing beside him, felt a wave of unease rising from the soles of his feet to his heart. A string that had been deliberately ignored suddenly snapped. He hurried upstairs and pushed open the door. Stella's bedroom was already empty. Only a torn half of a photograph and a farewell letter lay on the desk. The letter had only 2 lines. Grandpa Graham, I got into the National Defense University. I'm going to serve our country. Gordon Graham, goodbye. Gordon Graham's inner turmoil reached its peak at this moment. He looked down at the half photo on the desk, and a thought suddenly surfaced in his mind. Stella didn't want him anymore. Her saying she wouldn't pester him anymore wasn't a strategic retreat, not a pretense. She truly wanted to make a clean break with him, to leave him behind. Commander Graham SR walked up behind him, looking at the empty room and the letter in his hand. His old eyes also darkened. He reached out, took the letter, opened it in front of Gordon Graham, and began to read. After a long time, a long sigh echoed in the silent room. All right. He held the letter, hands behind his back, not looking at Gordon Graham, and walked out with a stooped back. At the doorway, he turned, opened his mouth, and only said, Stella's gone. She's not coming back. He seemed to suddenly remember something and hurried back to his own room, only to find it had been completely cleaned out by orderly Miles. He frantically searched everywhere, turning the originally tidy room into a mess, but he couldn't find that gardenia-scented hand cream. Stella was gone, not coming back. Along with her, the hand cream she had given him when she confessed, which he had never been able to bring himself to use, was also gone. He frantically called for orderly Miles, but the orderly was bewildered. Didn't you say to throw it all away, sir? He said it. He was the one who said it. All the words were spoken by him. Returning to Stella's bedroom. A corner of Gordon Graham's heart collapsed. Those details he had never paid attention to surfaced in his mind. He didn't know since when, but every time Stella looked at him, it was like a farewell. He suddenly began to regret. If last time he had stayed, would everything have been different? Gordon Graham swayed, but managed to steady himself by holding onto the desk. He took the half photo. That was the 22-year-old Gordon Graham. The Gordon Graham who still had Stella by his side. Not him, the Gordon Graham who had been torn away, left behind. Stanford, National Defense University. The morning sun spilled over the solemn academic buildings, the campus filled with a serious yet vibrant atmosphere. Today was the day for new student registration, and colorful banners hung everywhere on campus. In the center of the welcoming plaza, new students were registering. Stella, dragging her luggage, walked through a crowd of figures in military green and finally saw the banner for the Weapon Systems and Ordnance Engineering major. Her heart leaped with joy, and she quickened her pace. The senior students responsible for reception stood tall and straight, their dark green military uniforms adorned with lieutenant's insignia, 1 bar and 2 stars shining brightly in the sunlight. Stella took a deep breath, walked up to a female senior student at the reception, and introduced herself. Good morning, Lieutenant. I am Stella Sterling, a new student in Weapon Systems and Ordnance Engineering. Seeing Stella, the receiving senior student's eyes lit up. She smiled and took Stella's hands. Miss Sterling, welcome to the National Defense University. I'm Zoe Joyner, a 3rd-year senior. If you have any questions in the future, feel free to contact me. Her tone was friendly yet dignified, instantly making one feel warm. Registration, check-in, dormitory arrangements. By the time all this was done, it was already afternoon. There were 4 people in the dormitory. Besides Stella and another girl, 2 new students hadn't arrived yet. The girl in the bunk opposite hers had 2 pigtails and a baby face. She looked extremely introverted and uncomfortable, several times anxiously wanting to leave the dormitory, but always returning dejectedly at the door. After pacing back and forth a few times, she finally lowered her head and rested it on the desk. After organizing her belongings, Stella sat on her chair and took out a tin of creamy milk candies from her bag. She had specially bought this at the general store before leaving the capital. Previously, in an unfamiliar environment, she needed others to help her adapt. Now, she could not only face it alone but also help others. Stella smiled, took out 2 candies, and offered them to the girl in the opposite bunk. "Hello, my name is Stella Sterling." My name is Daisy Shepherd." The girl was clearly stunned, stammering as she spoke. Seeing the candies, a blush quickly spread across her simple, round, baby face. She waved her hands, seemingly wanting to refuse, but was too nervous to even get the words out. Stella gently took her hand and placed the 2 candies in her palm. "Daisy, I want to go to the campus store to buy a thermos. Can you come with me? I just got here, and I'm a bit uncomfortable being alone." "Oh, of course I can." Daisy Shepherd shot up from her seat, then, as if feeling too brash, took a small step back. "Then let's go." Stella always had a faint smile on her face. She proactively took Daisy's hand, and the latter didn't let go. The 2 of them asked for directions and searched for the campus store. They took many wrong turns, but also slowly became familiar with each other. "Stella, your hair is so short. I can't bear to cut mine." Her voice was soft, but she no longer avoided Stella's gaze. Stella, hearing this, casually ran her hands through her own short, soft hair, which quickly returned to its original style. She smiled and said, "It was too hot in the summer, so I just cut it." A hint of envy flickered in Daisy Shepherd's eyes. She lowered her gaze, her tone dejected. My mom said our bodies, hair, and skin are gifts from our parents. She won't let me cut it." Hearing this, Stella frowned. As far as she knew, the university had regulations for internal affairs. Female students usually had ear-length short hair or could tie it in a ponytail, but it couldn't interfere with wearing a helmet. Daisy's thick, long braids were probably not acceptable. Just as she was about to speak, Daisy added, "I'm useless too. I've already run away from home to go to university, but I'm still afraid of my mom's words and don't dare to cut my hair." "You ran away from home too?" "Too," Daisy Shepherd reacted, her eyes widening in disbelief. "You too." Her volume unconsciously rose, but she quickly lowered her voice again. "Do you also have a stepfather who wanted to sell you? They won't come and catch you again, will they?" Hearing Daisy's words, Stella's heart skipped a beat. Her hand holding Daisy's unconsciously tightened. She smiled and shook her head, her tone reassuring. "No, they won't. No one can come and take us away. Look at the sentries at the gate. They can't get in." Hearing this, Daisy Shepherd heaved a long sigh of relief. "That's good. If I were really caught and taken back, everything Mr. Barnaby taught me would be in vain." "Who is Mr. Barnaby?" Stella asked curiously. At the mention of Mr. Barnaby, Daisy Shepherd became animated, her whole demeanor bright as she talked incessantly. "Mr. Barnaby is the gentleman who lived in the cowshed. He was cultured and refined, wore glasses, and knew so much astronomy, geography, mathematics, English. I heard he even studied abroad when he was young. I met him when I was a child herding cattle. He said that just as history had its scholar hermits of old, today there was Mr. Barnaby. His surname was new like mine, so we were fated. He taught me to read, write, do arithmetic, our country's subjects, foreign subjects, he taught them all." As she said this, her eyes shone brightly, as if lost in some beautiful memory. But soon, a hint of sadness crept into her voice. "Later, Mr. Barnaby passed away. He always said he wanted to go home, but he died before he could." Her sadness didn't last long. She quickly perked up again. "So I read the books he left behind, hidden in the stone trough behind the cattle pen. The more I read, the more I wanted to see what was beyond the mountains. Mr. Barnaby said that man's dearest possession is life, and it is given to him but once. A man's life should be spent so that when he looks back on the years, he will not regret having lived idly and without purpose, nor will he be ashamed for having been mean and base." I thought about it for a long time. I wasn't new Jayati anymore. When I got my household registration, Mr. Barnaby helped me change my name to Kingmay Daisy. The Ching of green grass. I want to be like the wild grass that fire cannot destroy, that springs up again with the spring breeze. I couldn't be sold to a man, get married, have children, none of that. I didn't want to be confined to the kitchen, to be someone's wife, someone's old mother for my whole life. I love the airplanes and cannons in books. I want to study them. Mr. Barnaby said that if he couldn't go home, he wanted me to run out of the mountains and go back to see it for him. Stella, I ran out. Stella hadn't expected the introverted Daisy Shepherd to say so much at once. Her face was flushed, her chest heaved, but her eyes shone brightly. She proactively took Stella's hand and said gratefully, "Thank you, Stella. Besides Mr. Barnaby, no one else has ever been willing to listen to me talk so much. After this experience, Stella and Daisy Shepherd became thoroughly acquainted. As the two of them walked back to the dormitory hand in hand, carrying thermoses, they happened to encounter a girl on the stairs, panting and carrying two heavy large suitcases. She had a standard ear-length bob, wore glasses, and looked scholarly and well-read. Seeing this, Stella immediately wanted to go forward and help, but Daisy stopped her. "I'll do it." She handed the thermos to Stella and strode towards the girl. Under their astonished gazes, Daisy lifted one suitcase in each hand and effortlessly hoisted them onto her shoulders. The suitcases, which had seemed as heavy as stones moments ago, now felt like two tufts of cotton, resting lightly on Daisy's thin, slender shoulders. She even had the energy to turn back and say to the girl, whose glasses had slipped to the tip of her nose, "Let's go, classmate. Which floor do you live on?" "Save, 7th floor." "Stella, we all live on the 7th floor." With that, she carried the suitcases thump, thump, thump up the stairs, as nimble as if she were flying. Stella hadn't expected the timid, introverted, baby-faced girl to be a Hercules. She carried the two thermoses and said to the girl frozen on the stairs, "Classmate, let's go up too." The girl belatedly came to her senses and hurriedly introduced herself. "Hello, classmate. My name is Jackie Reddington. I'm a new student in Ordnance Engineering. Your friend is incredible." Stella felt a sense of pride and nodded in agreement. "She's amazing. Her name is Daisy Shepherd. I'm also an Ordnance Engineering student. My name is Stella Sterling." When they reached the 7th floor, the three of them discovered they were roommates. And the fourth roommate had already arrived. She had neat short hair, sharp features, looked very aloof, and spoke concisely. "Nina North." After saying that, she sat down in her seat and said no more. The three looked at each other and introduced themselves one by one. Nina North just gave a faint, looking rather unimpressed. Jackie Reddington pushed up her glasses. "Classmate Nina North, you're not in the Ordnance Engineering major, are you?" Stella looked at her and asked doubtfully, "How do you know?" "I glanced at the list during check-in." Daisy Shepherd's eyes widened, and she gave Jackie a thumbs up. Photographic memory, amazing, but Nina North didn't even lift her eyelids from beginning to end, still just giving a faint. All four roommates were now gathered. Although they came from different places and had vastly different personalities, they managed to get along harmoniously. And those two suitcases that Daisy Shepherd had carried in so lightly, when opened, turned out to be full of books. One can imagine how heavy they were. Even the aloof Nina North, who barely spoke, couldn't help but glance at Daisy a few more times after seeing Jackie open the suitcases. After all, she too had witnessed Daisy rushing into the room carrying the boxes. Stella's mouth twitched involuntarily. She pointed at the suitcases on the floor and asked Jackie, "Why did you bring so many books to university?" Jackie randomly picked out a book titled The Design of Nuclear Weapons from a suitcase, hugged it like a treasure, and kissed it repeatedly. "This is my food for thought." Stella then turned to look at Daisy Shepherd. "Such heavy suitcases, and you just picked them up and ran?" Daisy Shepherd took off her top, revealing a vest that couldn't hide her sturdy muscles and strong arms. "I've done farm work and herded cattle since I was little. If a cow misbehaved, I'd carry it and run." Jackie Reddington's glasses slipped to the tip of her nose again. She gasped, "That cow must have been very brave to dare misbehave." Nina North, who had been silent all along, suddenly stood up. "You're so strong, why didn't you go to the front lines and be a soldier?" The out-of-the-blue question left the other three stunned. Daisy, in particular, shifted uncomfortably closer to Stella, not knowing how to respond. Stella didn't rush to speak. Her gaze swept over Nina North's clenched fists. Veins bulged, muscles were clearly defined, and a thick layer of calluses covered her knuckles. These were marks accumulated from years of training. But the skin between her thumb and forefinger was smooth. She hadn't handled a gun. Stella had an idea. She asked, seemingly inquiring but actually stating, "You originally wanted to join the army on the front lines, not go to university." Nina North pressed her lips together, tacitly admitting it. "Hiss," Jackie Reddington pushed up her glasses. "Don't tell me your family changed your university preference and forcibly sent you here? After all, studying at National Defense University is much safer than being a soldier on the front lines." A flicker crossed Nina North's eyes. She frowned and asked, "What, you too?" Jackie Reddington waved her hands repeatedly. Not me. When I said I wanted to research serious firepower, the kind that could neutralize minor aggressors, my grandparents were overjoyed. They almost bought tickets that night to move the whole family here with me. Hearing this, Nina North lowered her head slightly, her spirits sinking. I was supposed to join the army, but I was sent to university instead. Hearing this, Jackie Reddington quickly consoled her. Don't be so down. Think about it, how many enemies can you eliminate with bare hands? Firepower superiority is the ultimate way when our country's missiles can reach any place in the world. Then the whole world will have to listen to us. And our soldiers won't have to face enemy fire with their bodies anymore, Stella added. Daisy Shepherd, standing beside her, nodded repeatedly. Mr. Barnaby said that the future world is a world of information. Wars between major powers will no longer be limited to person-to-person resistance, so the country must have cutting-edge weapons. Stella's heart trembled. Reborn, she knew they were right. But before her rebirth, she would never have had such insights. No wonder she had failed so miserably in her previous life. She smiled self-deprecatingly, but a light of faith soon rose in her eyes. Nikolai Ostrovsky wrote in How the Steel Was Tempered, "Man's dearest possession is life. It is given to him but once." But since heaven had given her another life, she would reforge herself into steel. This time, no one could stop her. It was just a pity for a scholar like Mr. Barnaby, so far-sighted and progressive in his thinking. To fall before the dawn was his regret. But one day, the spring breeze would pass, and Daisy Shepherd would change the world in his stead. The four girls slowly got to know each other, and military training began. But on the very first night, Daisy Shepherd came back crying. Jackie Reddington was by her side, somewhat at a loss, while Stella merely pursed her lips in silence, saying nothing. Nina North wasn't in their major. Having finished washing up, she came in carrying an enamel basin. Seeing the scene, she ignored her dripping hair, walked over, and asked with a frown, "What's wrong with Daisy?" A cold light glinted off Jackie Reddington's glasses. Daisy's braids are too long, she can't wear a helmet. But what the instructor said was really harsh. Daisy just tried to explain a little, and he punished her by making her stand in the sun all afternoon. Daisy Shepherd looked up, choking back sobs. "It's my fault. I couldn't bear to cut my braids, but She paused, wringing the hem of her clothes as if having made some kind of decision. She slowly reached out, took Stella's hand, and tried to make her voice sound calm. "Stella, can you help me cut my hair?" A moment later. Stella held the thick, glossy black hair, scissors in hand, and asked softly, "Daisy, are you ready?" Daisy Shepherd wanted to answer, but as soon as she opened her mouth, tears streamed down her face again. She could only nod vigorously, covering her mouth to keep from crying out loud. Stella pursed her lips and said solemnly, "Daisy, don't worry, I'll definitely cut it beautifully for you. Even if your mother finds out you cut your hair, she won't blame you." Hearing this, Daisy Shepherd wailed, "Cut it. My mom can't see anymore. She's dead. She knew I couldn't run away if she was alive, so she hanged herself with a rope one night." The scissors in Stella's hand suddenly trembled, leaving a bloody scratch on the back of her hand. She wiped it hastily and turned to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes. Jackie Reddington's glasses were blurred with tears, and Nina North's eyes were also red. Stella took a deep breath, steadying the hand holding the scissors. Composing herself, she said, "Daisy, you're not just cutting off your hair, you're cutting off shackles and the past. The mountains can't confine you, wildfire can't burn you out, and the hardships of this world cannot defeat you." Snip, snip, snip. Stella clutched the cut-off long hair tightly in her palm. Jackie Reddington braided it, and Nina North tied it with Daisy's usual hair tie. Daisy Shepherd clutched it and looked at it for a long time. Sniffling, she forced a smile and asked everyone, "Does it look good?" The three of them said in unison, "It looks good." A few days later, the capital. Nighttime. Gordon Graham, having finished a day of training, exuded an unapproachable, stern aura as he strode into the communications room. He picked up the phone, his voice low as he said, "Hello?" The other side immediately responded, "Captain Graham, your niece is indeed at the National Defense University. She has already registered and is majoring in weapon systems and ordnance engineering." "All right, I understand." Hanging up the phone, Gordon Graham's face was grim, his expression unreadable. But his constantly clenching fists and the bulging veins on the back of his hands betrayed his current emotions. He ground his back teeth with a creak, finally squeezing out a sentence from between them. Stella, you've really grown bold. Southford, National Defense University, female dormitory 702. Stella Sterling, wrapped in her quilt and drowsy, suddenly jolted, a feeling of weightlessness as if she had been pushed off a cliff. She instantly opened her eyes, all sleepiness gone. A cold sweat prickled her back. She clutched the quilt, sat up quietly, and leaned against the wall behind her. Gordon Graham's face unconsciously appeared in her mind. She shook her head, trying to drive away those images. Why think about him? I left. He should be happy. Stella sat for a while, listening to her roommate's breathing and the rhythmic chirping of insects outside the window. Sleepiness soon washed over her. Thinking about tomorrow's training, she yawned again and snuggled back under the covers. Before long, she fell into a deep sleep. In her dream, she was back in the laboratory of her previous life, but this time, the experiment didn't fail. She succeeded. The sleeping Stella's lips curved into a smile and a tear fell onto her pillow. A week later, evening. After training, Stella and her 3 roommates walked back together. They had planned to eat at the cafeteria, but the queue was too long. You're all tired from the day. You go back first. I'll buy the food here and bring it back for you, Daisy Shepherd said to the 3 behind her, looking at the long, orderly line. Stella was unwilling to leave her alone. How can we do that? How can we let you queue for food all by yourself? I'll stay with you. Really, there's no need. If you go back now, you can shower earlier. Some eat, some shower, we can stagger our time and be much faster. Listen to me, you go back first. The 3 couldn't persuade her, so they had to return to the dormitory first. About an hour later, the girls had finished washing up. Jackie Reddington was rubbing her hair, looking down from the windowsill. Not far away, for some unknown reason, a crowd had gathered and was moving en masse towards the building. She paid no mind, just focused on finding Daisy Shepherd, muttering, "Why isn't Daisy back yet? Did she have trouble carrying it all? Should we go down and get her?" Stella nodded, hung up her towel, and stood up. Nina North also put on her military green short-sleeved shirt. Just as the 3 were about to leave, the late-returning Daisy Shepherd rushed in, carrying 4 meal boxes. She shouted, "Bad news, Stella, run quickly, someone's here to grab you." "What?" Jackie Reddington and Nina North exclaimed in unison, their faces full of confusion. Even Stella herself was bewildered. She took the things from Daisy's hands, helped the panting girl sit down, and soothed her. What exactly happened? Daisy, speak slowly, don't rush. Jackie Reddington timely handed over a mug of water. Daisy gulped down several mouthfuls, calmed herself, but her tone remained anxious. "Stella, remember last time, I said my stepfather wanted to sell me, and you said you also ran away from home? Just now when I was coming back, I saw a very tall, strong, and fierce-looking man asking about you. I don't know how he got in, but he's already on his way here. He's definitely here to take you back and sell you. Run quickly." Stella was stunned, suddenly remembering she hadn't explained things clearly to Daisy last time. Besides, the only person who would come here looking for her was Gordon Graham. But shouldn't he be happy right now? Why would he come looking for her? Just as she was about to explain, Jackie Reddington let out a fierce cry, holding 2 alcohol bottles she had found somewhere, her face full of anger. How could such a thing happen? I'll blow him up. And on the other side, Nina North had silently wrapped a thin iron chain around her fist several times. Daisy Shepherd frowned, her expression regretful. "I shouldn't have come up. I should have dealt with him downstairs." "No, wait." Seeing the 3 about to rush downstairs for a fight, Stella hurriedly pulled them back. Wait, listen to my explanation. Nobody wants to sell me, really, I swear. Don't be afraid, I'll make sure that scumbag never returns." Jackie Reddington held a match in her left hand and an alcohol bottle in her right. Her eyes under the glasses gleamed with a cold light, looking like a terrorist ready to blow up the school at any moment. Nina North's face was murderous, and Daisy Shepherd was all brute strength. Stella used all her might to barely stop them, and then, omitting the romantic entanglements, simply explained the situation. Only then did the 3 breathe a sigh of relief. "Ah, but he really looked so fierce. We should still go down with you." Stella couldn't dissuade them. The 4 of them went downstairs together. With just one glance, she confirmed her suspicion. It was him, Gordon Graham, and the moment Stella appeared, Gordon Graham's entire attention was instantly drawn to her. His feet moved forward uncontrollably, and his throat felt inexplicably tight. But he had only taken a few steps when he sensed a murderous aura. Behind Stella were 3 other girls, staring at him like tigers, their eyes seeming to say, "I'll be watching you, always, always." His brow twitched. He didn't pay these young girls any mind and walked straight towards Stella. "Stella," Gordon Graham closed the distance in a few strides, wanting to grab Stella's hand, but she suddenly stepped back. Her calm tone carried a warning. "Uncle Gordon, this is a university." Her voice wasn't loud, but it made Gordon Graham freeze, a flash of pain in his eyes. "Stella, you left without a word, didn't even leave me a single sentence. Do you really want to sever ties with me?" Hearing this, Stella frowned at him, then suddenly smiled. "Uncle Gordon, I left you many words before. Every day you weren't home, I would write a lot. You were the one who told me to stop doing that. Why are you now blaming me for not even leaving you a single sentence? I'm grateful to the Graham family for taking me in, grateful to you for taking care of me, grateful that you gave me a home again. You didn't want to see me, so I left. Why are you looking for me now?" Stella's voice was devoid of emotion, as calm as if she were narrating an insignificant event. But it was this attitude that made Gordon Graham freeze on the spot, his lips trembling, unable to utter another word. He wanted to tell Stella it wasn't like that, not what she thought. However, he couldn't bring himself to say it. He couldn't face that version of himself, much less Stella. After a long pause, he looked at the girl he had longed for day and night and only asked, "Stella, are you doing well here?" "I'm doing very well, thank you for your concern, Uncle Gordon. I'm an adult now, I understand things, you don't need to come see me anymore. We've already had our last meeting." With that, Stella turned to walk back, but Gordon Graham grabbed her arm. He frowned, his eyes filled with a confusion Stella couldn't understand. "Stella, how did you become like this?" He looked utterly innocent, as if all his differential treatment, deliberate coldness, and indifference didn't matter, and Stella should always be obedient, always silently endure everything. Hearing this, Stella slowly pulled her hand away, just as he had once flung hers away. Turning back, her eyes were filled with a profound stillness. "I once wanted to ask you the same question, Uncle Gordon, but now none of it matters anymore. Uncle Gordon, I will always remember your kindness, but let's not see each other again." With that, Stella turned and walked into the dormitory building. Gordon Graham wanted to follow, but the 3 girls blocked him. Daisy Shepherd spread her arms, barring the entrance. Nina North held out a hand, making a clear gesture of refusal. And Jackie Reddington's words were not polite at all. "Comrade, stop right there. This is the women's dormitory." Gordon Graham was helpless, only able to watch Stella's retreating figure disappear around the corner. He shuddered, taking a step back as if his strength had left him. The obedient, endearing little girl in his memory and the departing figure before him just wouldn't merge. Gordon Graham didn't understand how the girl, whose eyes once held such adoration for him, could change so quickly. Or perhaps the one who had never understood their own feelings. It wasn't Stella. It was him. Gordon Graham stood downstairs from the dormitory for a long time. He didn't leave until all the lights were out. The temperature in Stratford was high. Early autumn nights were not cold, but rather a bit stuffy. Yet he felt his hands and feet trembling with cold. When Stella confessed to him at 17, he had felt nothing but shock and self-reproach. He was her uncle, how could she fall for him? It was too absurd. But just now, as he watched Stella walk away from him, he suddenly realized where his inner panic came from. It was the fear of loss, the panic of losing Stella. Not just the little girl who occasionally called him brother, playfully, or chased after him calling Uncle Gordon. But also the 17-year-old girl who bravely laid her heart bare. But now, it seemed he had already lost her. Those details he had deliberately ignored surfaced in his mind. He thought distance would make her realize her feelings, understand the difference between admiration and love. In the end, the one deeply entangled was himself. Just as Stella said, he was the one who had been hiding, the one who had ignored her. Why was it that when she truly left, no longer pestering him, he couldn't feel happy at all? The answer was obvious, yet he was unwilling to face it. Unwilling to face the self who had been moved when he heard Stella say she liked him. After a long time, Gordon Graham stopped walking and looked up at the dark night sky, a bitter smile on his face. Meanwhile, in female dormitory 702, the lights were already out. Only the faintest, shallowest breaths rose and fell in the room. None of the four were asleep, and they all tacitly remained silent. Stella was curled up in her blanket, not saying a word. Seeing Gordon Graham today was merely to make up for the regret of not saying goodbye. No matter what, the Graham family had been kind to her. If Gordon hadn't come, she would never have disturbed him again in this lifetime. But he came, and she ultimately couldn't ignore him. A soft sigh was particularly clear in the quiet night. "Don't sigh, you'll blow your good luck away." Daisy Shepherd's voice was very soft, but it gently reached everyone's ears. Jackie Reddington turned over, propped herself up on her elbow, and put on her glasses, as if only then could she hear clearly what others were saying. "Did Mr. Barnaby say that too?" Daisy Shepherd snuggled into her blanket, her voice a few degrees lower, somewhat muffled. "My mom said that." "That's right, don't sigh." Nina North uncharacteristically spoke up, just to prove she was also still awake. Jackie Reddington pushed up her glasses, the fire of gossip burning brightly in her eyes, and asked in a low voice, "Stella, was that man who came to find you today the uncle you mentioned? He seems really strange." "Yeah, the way he looked at you, it wasn't like, I don't know, but I also think he's weird," Daisy Shepherd added, peering over the bed rail. Stella remained silent for a long time before poking her head out from under the blanket. She pursed her lips, deliberating for a moment before saying, "He dislikes me." In the darkness, Nina North frowned. That wasn't the look of someone who dislikes you. Her voice was calm, but her tone was full of certainty. Stella closed her eyes, expelling the stale air trapped in her chest, and continued, "He used to be very good to me. After I became an orphan, he took great care of me. But I fell in love with him. When I was 17, I confessed to him, and after that he started to dislike me." "Wow," Jackie Reddington on the opposite bunk exclaimed, "you confessed to him. That's so brave." Stella's heart skipped a beat. She asked in astonishment, "Don't you think it's absurd for me to confess to my own uncle?" "You're not blood-related," Nina North said faintly. "Exactly, even if there is a blood relationship, can't they be together? There are so many instances in history. Nieces marrying uncles, sisters marrying brothers, emperors marrying their stepmothers, cousins marrying." Daisy Shepherd counted on her fingers, rattling them off as if they were family treasures. Jackie Reddington gasped, remarking, "Mr. Barnaby's knowledge was indeed too extensive." Daisy Shepherd chuckled. "No, I read about these myself." With this digression, the atmosphere in the dormitory immediately lightened considerably. As they talked, the topic returned to Stella. "So, did you come here just to get away from from that man?" Jackie Reddington asked. Stella shook her head, her gaze fixed on the sliver of moonlight seeping through the gap in the curtains, recalling events from her past life. In her previous life, after getting married, she resumed her studies, got into a relatively ordinary university, and studied medical nursing. Later, while working in a hospital, she accidentally met a patient. His body was severely affected by radiation. He had no children and no one to care for him. Except for a few students who occasionally came to visit, he was almost always alone in his hospital room. His bed was piled high with blueprints. He wrote and drew incessantly every day, speaking in a way others couldn't understand. Few people were willing to approach him. Only Stella always wanted to chat with him a little more. Over time, the frail old man began to treat her as his own student, always having endless things to say, endless knowledge to impart. Stella was captivated by the data and simply resigned from her hospital job to take care of the old man full-time. When she wasn't at the hospital, she also enrolled in night school to fill the gaps in her chemistry knowledge. The more she learned, the more she was drawn in. But the old man's body was already like an exhausted lamp. He held on in the hospital for 3 years, his condition worsening day by day. On his deathbed, he left Stella only a pile of blueprints, a notebook, and a letter of introduction. The letter contained only a few simple words: "Let young Stella join the research institute." Old Mason. Thinking of this, Stella closed her eyes, her voice filled with unconcealable sorrow. "I promised someone I would complete an experiment. I can't break my word." She had to see Professor Mason. She had to support this project with him before he collapsed. Those experimental data, those countless blueprints, she dared not forget them for a moment. She would always remember the old man on his hospital bed, his stooped back and yet unbent spine. She had thought that after meeting, Gordon Graham wouldn't come again. But the next day, Stella still encountered him at the university. He just stood there by the roadside, straight as a ramrod, drawing gazes from passersby, making him hard to ignore. Stella had intended to walk past him and leave directly, but his gaze remained fixed on her, like a thorn in her back. "Stella, your uncle isn't a sniper, is he? Why does his stare feel like a knife, making one feel so uncomfortable?" Daisy Shepherd hugged her arm, deliberately lowering her voice, as if afraid Gordon Graham, over 10 meters away, would hear. Stella patted the back of her hand reassuringly, but she didn't know what had gone wrong. Logically, after she left, Gordon Graham should have been happy and wouldn't have sought her out again. But he came. If he was dissatisfied because she hadn't said goodbye to him, well, she had said goodbye yesterday. Why was he here again? Could it be, last night, Jackie Reddington's words echoed in her ears, but I think, that look in his eyes, it's like he likes you. When you distanced yourself from him, he looked so sad. We even thought maybe you didn't like him and didn't want to be entangled with him. Thinking of this, Stella violently shook her head, dispelling those voices. Impossible. The person he truly loved was Lydia Brighton. They were going to have children together in the future. "Stella, you have no relationship with him anymore." Taking a deep breath, Stella ignored the sharp gaze from behind her and walked away with Daisy. For several days in a row, Gordon Graham would appear on Stella's usual routes. Sometimes on the way to class, sometimes on the way to the cafeteria, sometimes waiting directly downstairs from her dormitory. But he just stood there, neither approaching her nor trying to call out to her, as if merely confirming she was doing well. The first one to break was Jackie Reddington. After she returned to the dormitory one more time, under Gordon Graham's full, unwavering gaze, she finally climbed onto Stella's bed, aggrieved. Stella, who was reading before bed, was stunned as a furry head landed on her chest. Jackie mumbled, "It's too scary, Stella, too scary. Every time I see his eyes, I want to throw a firebomb at him. If this goes on, I'll definitely be expelled from school." Stella put down her book and gently stroked her head. Actually, she had also been thinking that Gordon Graham constantly staying at the university was not a solution. Although other students didn't know him, it was ultimately not good for her roommates. Jackie Reddington's words solidified her decision to resolve the problem completely. "I'll deal with it as soon as possible." She patted Jackie's back and offered a reassuring smile. Then, she got out of bed and headed downstairs. Outside the dormitory, Gordon Graham stood by the roadside, as straight as a poplar tree. Stella took a deep breath, composed herself, and tried to make her expression appear calmer and more distant. From the moment she appeared, Gordon Graham's gaze had not left her, until Stella walked step by step in front of him. Their eyes met, and his heart trembled imperceptibly. His Adam's apple bobbed. It was he who spoke first. "It's so late, why did you come down?" Stella didn't answer his question, but calmly retorted, "It's so late, why is Uncle Gordon still here?" "I submitted a leave application to the Army and the university for family visit. It's only for a week. If you don't want to see me, I'll just look at you more." "Uncle Gordon, I don't understand." Stella looked straight at him, seemingly trying to see through his eyes to understand what he was really thinking. Gordon Graham's expression was momentarily stunned. "What?" Stella looked into those eyes, the coldness in them receding, replaced by a long-absent warmth. Why? Was it because he was sure she no longer liked him, so he decided to be good to her as before? But now, she didn't need it at all. The Stella Sterling who loved him, respected him, in whose eyes he had no flaws, had already died in the explosion of her previous life. "Uncle Gordon, I said I wouldn't pester you anymore. Why are you still doing this? When I was here, you ignored me. When I left, you came all this way to find me. Uncle Gordon, I really don't understand why you're doing this. I've already done as you wished. Why are you bothering now?" Her gaze was calm and composed, as if she had become a different person. It made Gordon Graham feel incredibly unfamiliar. "Stella, you wouldn't have said these things before." Stella suddenly found it somewhat amusing. Her gaze towards Gordon Graham held a hint of confusion and bewilderment. "Uncle Gordon, you wouldn't have abandoned me for others before. You wouldn't have deliberately ignored me in front of others, much less forced me to eat things I couldn't. So, the before you're talking about, which before is it? Was it before you deliberately hurt me to push me away, or before I hadn't given up and was still chasing after you? Uncle Gordon, before is just before." At this moment, Gordon Graham finally realized that there should have been a better way to handle this relationship, but he had chosen the worst one. He opened his mouth, not daring to look Stella in the eyes again. "Stella, I'm sorry. It's okay, I forgive you." Stella's response was extraordinarily magnanimous. A flicker of joy flashed in Gordon Graham's eyes, and he looked up in disbelief. Then, Stella's next sentence plunged him back into hell. "And please forgive my previous immature pestering. I won't appear again in the future, and you don't need to worry about me anymore. I will wish you and Lydia brighten a long and happy life together, blessed with children. Uncle Gordon, let's not see each other again." With that, Stella turned to leave, but Gordon Graham grabbed her and pulled her tightly into his arms. "No, Stella, listen to me explain. Lydia and I are not what you think. We have nothing going on. It was just that day you came to the base to find me, I thought. We weren't really dating. It was just to deceive you, to make you back off. I know my wrong approach hurt you. It's all my fault, every bit of it. Stella, can you give me another chance?" Stella suddenly laughed. She forcefully pushed away the man in front of her, her gaze towards him filled with disappointment. Pretending to be a couple. Would pretending to be a couple involve taking wedding photos? Could pretending to be a couple result in 2 children? Could pretending to be a couple mean rushing over in the middle of the night after receiving a phone call? Then, she truly had to admire Gordon Graham and Lydia Brighton's dedication. If they went to make movies in Port City now, they might become superstars worth billions. Moreover, if she had really stayed in the capital, would they have truly pretended all the way to marriage and children? A hint of mockery appeared in Stella's eyes. Gordon Graham didn't miss the emotion in her eyes but still suppressed the bitterness in his heart. "Stella, don't give up on me." As he spoke, his eyes had already reddened, but Stella found everything before her incredibly laughable. Such a Gordon Graham was rare. In her memory, she had only seen him like this once. It was when she had an allergic reaction to the rabbit leg Gordon Graham brought back and was sent to the hospital. At that time, Gordon Graham was just 18. He carried the 13-year-old Stella, panickedly running towards the hospital, sweat mixed with tears dripping onto her all the way. The pain made Stella's face pale, but she still tried to lift her hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead. At that time, he had choked out a promise. "Stella, I won't let you get hurt again, never again." But that was the 18-year-old Gordon Graham, not the 22-year-old Gordon Graham, and certainly not the 24-year-old Gordon Graham. A promise was just a promise, just empty words. Gordon Graham. Hearing his name, Gordon Graham looked up, his gaze towards Stella full of pleading and hope, but Stella's eyes held only icy coldness. "The way you are now, I find it utterly absurd." The light in Gordon Graham's eyes was shattered by her words, sentence by sentence, eventually turning into specks of moisture that merged into the night. "Did you come looking for me because you realized you like me, or because my sudden departure meant I was out of your control? Or perhaps you just got used to having someone like me behind you, chasing you every step of the way?" Gordon Graham's Adam's apple bobbed, but he didn't utter a single word. Seeing his silence, Stella sneered, turned, and walked into the dormitory building. "No, Stella, I really like you," Gordon Graham hurriedly explained, wanting to chase after her, but his feet seemed rooted to the spot, unable to move. But Stella was far enough away to hear Gordon Graham's words clearly. Yet her steps didn't falter in the slightest. "Gordon Graham, let's both move forward. Don't look back." 10 years later, the Capitol, entrance to the conference hall. Gordon Graham spoke in a low voice to his team members. "All units, take your positions. Ensure there are no disturbances. This press conference cannot afford any mistakes." 10 years had made his appearance more mature and resolute, his aura powerful and unignorable. The walkie-talkie responded, "Understood, every door is guarded." Inside the solemn and dignified conference room, on the rostrum, a carefully prepared lectern stood, flanked by national flags. In the center hung the iconic emblem of Red Star 1, shining brilliantly. Below the stage, hundreds of media reporters from all over the world were already seated, camera lenses flashing. Lydia Brighton, in a smart professional suit, wearing a press pass and holding a microphone, stood before a camera. The atmosphere here is extremely tense. Reporters from various countries have gathered, waiting for the mystery of Red Star 1 to be unveiled. Reporters from various countries were also reporting intensively. This is not just a press conference, but a historical witness. The global security landscape may be redrawn because of this. I just received a tip-off. The technological breakthroughs involved in Red Star 1 this time will have a profound impact on the future military balance. The television director shouted into his headset, 3 minutes to prepare, all cameras confirm. We are bringing this moment to the nation, to the world. An unspoken yet intense excitement filled the air. Everyone's eyes were focused on the lectern, waiting for that moment to arrive. Professor Morris Mason, supported by Stella Sterling, walked step by step towards the lectern. The previously restless conference hall instantly fell silent. Everyone held their breath, anticipating this historic moment. Stella helped Professor Mason adjust the microphone. After a piercing electronic squeal, Professor Mason's aged, yet steady voice slowly flowed out, "Distinguished guests. Friends from the media, at this historic juncture at the turn of the century, it is with immense excitement that we solemnly present to the world the latest achievement of our nation's defense technology, the Red Star 1 Advanced Air Defense Missile System. Next, Comrade Stella Sterling, Vice Chief Designer of Red Star 1, will present the report." Professor Mason's voice was old, but his spirits were high. He extended his hand towards Stella, his eyes looking at her as if she were his most prized child. Teacher and student across 2 lifetimes, through thick and thin. This time, they had finally completed the handover of their mission before fate intervened. Stella Sterling, in her military uniform, stood up, strode to the center of the rostrum, and executed a fluent and standard military salute. She was resolute and confident, her gaze fixed straight ahead, her eyes revealing honor and faith. Then, she took Professor Mason's place under the spotlight and slowly unveiled the mystery of Red Star 1. Red Star 1 combines the latest guidance technology and composite material science, achieving unprecedented interception accuracy and reaction speed. It can efficiently identify, track, and shoot down various aerial threats, including stealth aircraft and supersonic missiles. Furthermore, Red Star 1 employs a dual lock mechanism of active radar homing and infrared imaging technology, ensuring the accuracy and flexibility of target acquisition. Its unique flight control system enables high maneuverability flight within complex atmospheric layers, significantly enhancing interception efficiency. Once the press conference concluded, it triggered extensive reports from domestic and international news reporters, making the front page of the Capital Times that day. The Military Journal. Red Star 1, a new chapter in our nation's air defense missile technology, the Defense Chronicle. A landmark achievement, Red Star 1 leads the new trend in air defense technology, the Capital Times. Red Star 1, China's air defense missile prowess on full display as soon as the press conference ended. Lydia Brighton, in her capacity as a journalist, blocked Stella Sterling's path. "Stella, long time no see." Lydia Brighton's smile was appropriate, but as she spoke, her eyes intentionally or unintentionally glanced towards the door. "I didn't expect you to be the vice chief designer of an air defense missile system now. I haven't heard from you for so many years, I thought. Never mind, let's not talk about that. Since you're back in the capital this time, would you like to visit the old commander? He's getting old now, often talks about the past, and frequently mentions you to me. But Gordon and I haven't had any news from you, so we didn't know how to bring it up. You left without a word back then, it was a bit too willful." Stella's expression was calm, as if she hadn't heard Lydia's barbed accusations and subtle flaunting. She merely glanced down at Lydia Brighton's press pass and said faintly, "Reporter Lynn, may I ask if these statements are questions related to the conference, or are you simply reminiscing?" Then, without waiting for Lydia Brighton to answer, she continued, "If it's a question, it's unrelated to the conference. If it's reminiscing, some other time." With that, she packed her things, supported Professor Mason, and left the conference hall under the protection of her security detail. Not far away, Gordon Graham, who didn't know what the two had said, just watched Stella's departing figure, unable to regain his senses for a long time. After everyone had dispersed, Lydia Brighton finally stomped her foot hard. The smile on her face could no longer be maintained, and Gordon Graham hadn't looked at her once from beginning to end, as if Lydia Brighton didn't exist. Back in the black government sedan, a complex and profound expression appeared on Professor Mason's face, a mixture of relief, emotion, and a touch of sorrow. Tears glistened in his aged eyes, the vicissitudes of time intertwined with the light of ideals. His lips curved upwards, blooming into a satisfied smile. Young Stella, we succeeded. With the advent of Red Star 1, America's military hegemony won't last much longer. Professor Mason's eyes looked ahead, filled with reminiscence and emotion. Stella, beside him, took his withered, mottled hand, covered with calluses and wrinkles. Her voice was soft, yet her tone was exceptionally solemn. Teacher, rest assured, we will not only have Red Star 1, but also 5 and 6. We will, step by step, make the world listen to our voice. Red Star 1 was fully unveiled. 2 and 3 had been successfully developed and could be put into combat readiness at any time. 4 was currently in the development stage. The 5 and 6 development projects were already in planning. Professor Mason nodded with emotion, patting the back of Stella's hand approvingly. Young Stella, thank you. When I think that our country still has young people like you, I feel at ease. With that, his stooped body trembled, and he began to cough violently. Bright red bloodstains appeared on the white handkerchief. Stella knew Professor Mason didn't have much time left, but there wasn't a trace of fear of death in his eyes, only a calmness and composure that came after experiencing many hardships. I thought I would never be able to complete this firm and great task before the end of my life. It was you all who let me see hope, who helped me realize my ideals. Meeting you children was my good fortune. Meanwhile, deep in the western desert, in the command tent, Jackie Reddington stared at the electronic display screen, her brow furrowed. One of her eyeglass lenses was cracked, her face smudged with dust, but her gaze was bright and determined. Suddenly, she picked up the walkie-talkie and decisively ordered, "All units, prepare 3, 2, 1, launch," before her voice faded. A missile leaped from its launcher with a deafening roar, like a silver flash of lightning, tearing through the sky in the control room. Everyone held their breath, staring intently at the missile's trajectory on the screen. It nimbly avoided interference and accurately locked onto the high-altitude target drone. The moment the two light trails intersected in the air, the explosive fireball illuminated half the sky. The target drone was shattered, instantly turning into a cloud of smoke and dust. The experiment was a success. Thunderous cheers erupted on sight. Jackie Reddington was swept into a full embrace by Daisy Shepard, who had rushed into the control room. She was spun around in midair several times before being dizzily set down. Great, Red Star 4 test was successful. I really hope Stella and Professor Mason can get this good news right away. Jackie Reddington pushed up her glasses, rubbing her chest hard. They will. They'll know. Statesman Grand Hotel. Stella Sterling put down the phone, unconcealable excitement on her face. She hurried to Professor Mason's side. The old man in the chair, facing the sunset glow before the floor-to-ceiling window, had his eyes tightly closed, his head tilted slightly to one side. A blanket covered him, an IV needle was in the back of his hand, his breathing extremely light and shallow. He looked aged and fragile. Stella slowly knelt, bringing herself to eye level with the old man. Her voice was very soft, as if afraid to disturb him. "Teacher, number 4 test was successful." The old man didn't open his eyes. A heh-heh sound came from his throat. After a long time, he murmured, "Good." Dusk was falling, the setting sun hidden behind the mountains. Come morning, the sun would still rise in the east. The old replacing the new is both change and inheritance. A few days later, the Graham residence. Stella Sterling, in casual clothes, stood at the door holding several bags, hesitating for a long time before taking a deep breath and ringing the doorbell. Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, trotted over. Peering through the gaps in the gate railings for a moment, her eyes suddenly lit up. With a joyful expression, she opened the gate and welcomed her in. She didn't forget to shout, "Old Master Stella's back, Commander Graham SR," leaning on a cane, hurried out of the house. His posture was no longer as upright as before, his back stooped, and his once salt and pepper hair was now completely white. "Is Stella?" He staggered towards Stella, looking at the person before him, almost unable to recognize her. Stella's eyes suddenly reddened. "Grandpa, it's me, I'm back. A wave of deep guilt washed over her. Stella choked up, her vision blurring several times. Commander Graham SR tightly gripped her hands, his smile kind. It's good you're back, good you're back. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, he turned to Mrs. Gable and said, Quick, quick, go buy groceries. Buy all of Stella's favorite steamed ribs, small yellow croaker, buy a lot, and Gordon Graham, call him and tell him to come back. Hearing this, Stella quickly grabbed Commander Graham S.R.'s arm. She said, somewhat hesitantly, Grandpa, Uncle Gordon is busy. Let's not disturb him. Commander Graham S.R. looked at Stella, understanding everything perfectly, but ultimately said nothing, merely waving his hand at Mrs. Gable. Go buy the groceries. Commander Graham S.R. led Stella into the house and asked her about many things that had happened over the years. Seeing the little girl who used to follow him around calling, Grandpa, Grandpa, had grown into a graceful young woman, his eyes were filled with unconcealable admiration and relief, especially since she was also a brave and resolute soldier, a ballistic weapons engineer. I saw the news a few days ago, Stella. You did well. Hearing Grandpa Graham's praise, Stella smiled gently. She said gratefully, Grandpa, without you, I wouldn't be where I am today. I owe all of this to your support and encouragement back then. Thank you, Grandpa. Stella poured a cup of tea and handed it to Commander Graham S.R. With both hands, Commander Graham S.R. nodded, took it, and sipped. It was your own hard work. What I did was just icing on the cake. The grandfather and granddaughter sat together, chatting congenially. Stella told Commander Graham S.R. many things that had happened to her over the past 10 years. Commander Graham S.R. listened, nodding slowly, occasionally asking a question or two, interacting with Stella. When he heard she had nowhere to go during winter break and was taken home by a classmate, he sighed with a pained expression. This is still Gordon's fault. If it weren't for him, how could you have not come home for 10 years? But this friend of yours, young Lee, she seems like a good person. You went home together, and even during winter break, it was lively like being in the dorm. Finally, he added somewhat plaintively, it's not like here. After you left, there was no life in this place at all. Hearing this, Stella suddenly thought of Lydia Brighton, whom she had met a few days ago. She couldn't help but say, I met Sister Lydia at the conference hall a few days ago. She said she often comes here to accompany you. She and Uncle Gordon have been married for a long time, haven't they? Commander Graham S.R.'s brow furrowed, a look of confusion in his eyes. Them? What marriage are they in? And often comes to accompany me. What can she accompany me with? Nonsense. Commander Graham S.R. put on a stern face, then, on second thought, asked tentatively, Stella, is there some misunderstanding between you and Gordon? I thought it was strange when I read the letter you left back then. Grandpa guarantees you, Gordon hasn't had any other woman by his side these years you've been away. He was just slow to realize. Back then, you liked him, he didn't know his own heart, always rejecting you. But later, he did go looking for you. It seems he was rejected though, haha. Don't you listen to nonsense from people with ulterior motives. Commander Graham S.R.'s eyes unconsciously darted towards the door. Stella lowered her eyelids and slowly sipped her tea. A faint smile appeared on her face. Grandpa, let's not talk about past matters. Before, I was young and didn't understand things. I mistook familial affection and dependence for romantic love. Not anymore. Crash, a sound of a bag falling to the ground came from behind her. Stella turned towards the source of the sound. There stood a travel-worn Gordon Graham at the doorway, fruit scattered at his feet. He stood there, his eyes filled with disbelief, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Gordon Graham's lips trembled. He looked at Stella, unable to utter a word. Stella, after a long moment, his voice, tinged with a tremor, took a step forward, each step seeming exceptionally heavy. Stella's gaze met his. The face that had once made her heart flutter now failed to stir even a ripple within her. Uncle Gordon, you're back. Stella's voice was calm, without excessive emotional fluctuation. She had long since laid this past to rest in her heart. Gordon Graham approached, reaching out as if to touch her face, but Stella gently avoided him. She didn't look at Gordon Graham again, but stood up to bid farewell to Grandpa Graham. Grandpa, I have other matters to attend to, so I'll leave first. I'll come see you another day. Commander Graham S.R. reached out his hand, his eyes full of reluctance. But in the end, it was only a helpless sigh. Stella, take care of yourself when you're out. Come back and see Grandpa more often when you have time. I will. You take care of yourself. After saying goodbye to Grandpa Graham, Stella left directly. the moment she brushed past Gordon Graham. Gordon Graham's hands trembled, as if wanting to stop her from leaving, but ultimately, he did nothing. Only when Stella was about to get into the car did Gordon Graham hurriedly chase out the main gate. Stella, Gordon Graham's words died in his throat. He found he didn't know where to begin. Stella smiled faintly, a smile devoid of hatred or love, only a sense of release. Uncle Gordon, you should have heard what I said just now. I meant every word. You once said I was young and didn't understand what love was. Now I understand. So, I wish you an early happiness. Gordon Graham stood frozen, watching Stella turn and get into the car as if he were merely a passerby. He finally understood that some missed opportunities could never be reclaimed. Commander Graham SR, leaning on his cane, watched this scene, a complex emotion flashing in his eyes. After Stella left, Gordon Graham stood rooted to the spot for a long time without moving. Commander Graham SR slowly walked out, patted his shoulder, and said nothing more, but that silent comfort brought a bitter taste to his heart. If he had listened to his father earlier and recognized his own feelings, he and Stella wouldn't have missed each other. As if seeing through his thoughts, Commander Graham SR, hands behind his back, let out a laugh that was hard to tell whether it was regretful or mocking. I told you long ago, be nicer to the young lady. Otherwise, when she really doesn't want you anymore, you'll have nowhere to cry. You were so stubborn back then, saying you didn't like her. Now you regret it, don't you? It's too late for regrets now. A bitter smile escaped Gordon Graham's lips. The words he had once spoken, the things he had once done, were like a bullet that traveled through time to hit him squarely between the eyes. In these 10 years, he had thought more than once that there were better ways to guide Stella's feelings for him. But he hadn't. Everything he did pushed Stella away from him. Yet, when she truly gave up, he realized how much his heart could ache. Once, every night he didn't come home, Stella would write him long letters, expressing her longing and dependence and her youthful love. In the following 10 years, he too had written countless such letters, doing the very things he once scorned. But he hadn't mailed a single one. Regret? Yes, regret. They had met so early. They had so much time, so many opportunities. If only he had been willing, everything would have paved the way for their love, but he had cowardly retreated. That retreat left him with no way back. After handling Professor Mason's affairs, Stella Sterling was to return to the research base. Professor Mason had two wishes in his life. One was to develop their country's own air defense missile, and the other was to return to his roots. He dedicated his life to national defense research, toiling alone in the depths of the desert for over 40 years, yet few knew his name. He had no family, few friends. Even his funeral was exceptionally quiet and solemn. Cars of military leaders and national leaders came one after another. Everyone seemed to be familiar with him, yet also very distant. Stella, as his student, and as the person still living in this world who knew him best, presided over his funeral. After everyone had dispersed, she stood alone before the grave, looking at the aged, wrinkled, yet kindly smiling face on the tombstone. She bent down and placed a bouquet of flowers before the stone. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her tone was deliberately light. She said, "Teacher, you rest for a while. When you open your eyes again, you will surely see a stronger motherland standing tall at the pinnacle of the world. Perhaps then we will meet again." Stella Sterling returned to the research base. She just didn't expect that Gordon Graham would be among those accompanying her this time. On the plane, he remained silent, not uttering a word. Stella, however, couldn't help but glance at him frequently. She wasn't concerned about Gordon Graham's reasons for being there. She was just worried about Grandpa Graham's health. After all, Professor Mason had just passed away, and she was sensitive about such matters. In her view, it would be better for Gordon Graham to stay in the capital military region, where he could look after Grandpa Graham at any time. But this was just her thought. What Gordon Graham actually did was none of her business. Thinking of this, Stella's attention returned to the magazine in her hand. Red Star 5 was about to enter development. As the chief engineer of this project, she had no time for distractions. The most important thing now was to conserve her energy to quickly immerse herself in work. Gordon Graham's peripheral vision kept drifting towards Stella. Seeing that she only glanced at him a few times but said nothing, a sense of loss welled up in his heart. He tilted his head slightly, carefully observing her gentle and serene profile. Stella had her head slightly lowered, the soft light from above her head casting a gentle halo on every strand of her hair. She was immersed in her own world, unaware of his gaze. An air steward walked between them. Gordon Graham immediately withdrew his gaze, his hands resting on his knees unconsciously tightening, clenching his trousers. Just then, a foreign passenger staggered into the cabin. Several passengers around Stella immediately became alert. Whether they were reading newspapers or pretending to sleep, they all entered a state of readiness. Gordon Graham, with his extensive special operations experience, sensed something was wrong almost the instant the foreign tourist appeared. As the man pulled out a pistol and pointed it at Stella, Gordon Graham reacted instantly, shielding her. "Stella, be careful!" Bang, two sounds rang out simultaneously. The bullet shattered the light above Stella's head. Screams erupted in the cabin, and several more terrorists instantly appeared. The battle ignited. The special operations team engaged in a life-or-death struggle with the terrorists, while Stella, facing a mortal threat, showed no panic. Under the protection of the special operations team, the terrorists were quickly subdued. Suddenly, Stella keenly detected a rhythmic beep-beep sound. A fine layer of sweat seeped from her palms. This was a passenger plane, with many ordinary civilians. This terrorist attack was clearly aimed at her. She couldn't let innocent people be implicated. She slowly moved behind Gordon Graham, just about to tell him there might be a bomb on the plane. Then she saw the terrorist reveal a triumphant smile. He then shouted in broken local language, "There's a bomb on the plane, it will explode soon, you're all finished." The cabin instantly plunged into panic again. Screams and cries erupted. The special operations team brought all terrorists under control. The flight crew did their best to calm the other passengers' emotions, urgently evacuating them to a location away from the scene. Stella quickly began to search for the explosive device. The atmosphere in the cabin was tense to the extreme. Every second felt incredibly long. Faint sobs could be heard around. Large beads of sweat dripped from Stella's forehead, but her face showed no fear or panic. Finally, Stella found a time bomb under a seat. Gordon Graham squatted opposite her, their breaths almost audible over each other's heartbeats. Careful, Gordon Graham's low warning sounded. He stared intently at the readings on the display, sweat trickling down his forehead. 3 minutes left. As soon as he spoke, the air seemed to grow even more tense. Time seemed to freeze. Only the ticking sound echoed throughout the cabin, the merciless countdown like the approaching footsteps of death. All passengers held their breath, too nervous to breathe. Stella's eyes were sharp and profound, her fingers lightly brushing over the complex wiring, trying to find a breakthrough. Soon, her gaze darkened slightly. She clearly had a plan. She looked up at Gordon Graham and pulled out the military knife from his leg sheath. Her voice was very soft, yet brooked no argument. "I need you to work with me." We cut the red and blue wires simultaneously. "Okay." Gordon Graham's brow furrowed, but he showed no hesitation regarding Stella's decision. He took a military knife from someone nearby and signaled others to quickly retreat. "I'll count to 3, and we act at the same time." Stella's hands were as steady as a rock, her voice calm and strong. 1, 2, 3, the two acted with perfect coordination, cutting almost at the same instant. The air seemed to solidify at that moment. A few short seconds, yet it felt like an eternity. Gordon Graham's gaze had been fixed on Stella from the moment he cut the blue wire. He thought, if the end of his life was with Stella, it would be a mercy and fortune bestowed upon him by heaven. Finally, 1:47, the flashing numbers paused, then reset to 0. The alarm sound ceased. The cabin was silent. Only after Stella completely dismantled the bomb and the cabin was confirmed safe did everyone erupt in cheers of relief from surviving a disaster. Gordon Graham also breathed a sigh of relief. He slowly stood up, looking at Stella, who had remained calm and composed in the face of danger. A hint of gratification and complexity filled his gaze. Stella was no longer the little girl who would cry and cling to his hand. In places he couldn't see, she had secretly grown into an adult capable of standing on her own. The one standing before him now was not the timid, frightened 12-year-old Stella who had just arrived at the Graham family. Nor was it the 17-year-old girl who confessed her budding love to him. Even less was it the 19-year-old girl who coldly drew a line between them. Now she was a soldier, a national high-end weapons research talent, the chief engineer and general designer of military projects. She had quietly grown up, casting aside everything that had once shackled her. Everything from the past seemed too insignificant when brought before her now. Compared to her ideals and beliefs, he and the past were not worth mentioning. Stella didn't know what he was thinking. She just waved her hand in front of his eyes. "Uncle Gordon, are you okay?" Gordon Graham suddenly snapped back to reality. Looking at the girl whose image constantly overlapped with his memories, he shook his head. "I'm fine. How about you? Were you scared?" Stella couldn't help but smile. "Although I've always been doing research in the rear, I graduated from a military academy, after all. This kind of thing doesn't scare me." Her tone was light, like a gentle breeze, dispelling the gloom in Gordon Graham's heart. He smiled and couldn't help asking, "How did you make that judgment so quickly just now?" Stella shrugged and smiled. "We had a demolitions whiz in our dorm. During our university days, we often competed to see who could dismantle bombs faster or whose bombs were harder to figure out. The level of this bomb was far inferior to hers." Meanwhile, Jackie Reddington, deep in the Gobi Desert, sneezed. "Who's thinking of me?" She sniffled and continued to bury herself in her work. Gordon Graham chuckled, his words carrying a hint of teasing, but more so, respect. "Then your university life must have been quite interesting." A crisis averted. Passengers gradually returned to their seats. Stella meticulously checked every cabin of the plane again. After all the commotion, she was also somewhat tired. For the latter part of the journey, she mostly rested with her eyes closed. After flying for another hour or so, the plane finally landed and taxied. Public security authorities also dispatched armed police and special police to take custody of the foreign terrorists who attempted to hijack the plane. Stella also got into the vehicle sent by the research base. She had originally thought that Gordon Graham and his special operations team might only be responsible for escorting her until the handover to the research base was complete. Unexpectedly, they were to escort her all the way back to the research base. Looking at Gordon Graham sitting beside her, Stella was somewhat surprised. On second thought, Red Star 1 had appeared 10 years earlier than in her previous life. It was normal for some countries with ulterior motives to make certain moves in response. The airport was still several hundred kilometers away from the research base. Time flew, and it was soon night. In the deep, dark wilderness, occasional wolf howls could be heard. Although the convoy drove with extreme caution, an accident still occurred. The road ahead was blocked by rocks and tree trunks. The special operations team members in the lead vehicle immediately went to check, their flashlight beams drawing pillars of light in the darkness, illuminating the obstacles ahead. At this moment, an unexpected change occurred. A truck, as if out of control, roared towards the convoy, like a rampaging beast, reckless of the consequences. The special operations team reacted almost instantly, shooting at the tires, but this didn't stop the truck. The sound of tires screeching against the ground was particularly harsh in the night. Gunshots, explosions, erupted one after another in the night. The enemy seemed to want to take Stella, but under the protection of the research base and the special operations team, they found no opportunity. The roar of fighter jets came from overhead. The sound of helicopter rotors tore through the night sky. It was reinforcements. Suddenly, a dark-hand grenade rolled to Stella's feet. Stella, Gordon Graham, who had been tightly gripping her wrist, had no time to think. His body reacted instinctively, pushing her as far away as possible, then leaping up, wrapping his arm around her waist and shielding her beneath him. The grenade exploded nearby. Overturned vehicles ignited one after another, and the shockwave and flames instantly engulfed everything around. Stella's ears rang with a deafening hum. She could hear a muffled groan from behind her and the sticky wetness gradually spreading on her back. The piercing dial tone amplified her breathing infinitely. The hand on her waist suddenly loosened and the warm weight slumped over. She staggered to her feet. What rushed into her blurred vision was Gordon Graham's mangled back. "Uncle Gordon," her voice was hoarse. Her legs gave way and she knelt beside Gordon Graham. But she didn't check his wounds first. Instead, she picked up the gun that had fallen beside him. Bang, 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 bandits in the smoke and dust fell in response. Only when she saw familiar figures running towards her did her vision go black and she collapsed. The air was filled with the smell of disinfectant. Stella Sterling slowly opened her eyes. In the haze, she only saw the white ceiling above. Noticing she was awake, Nina North hurried over. "Stella, how do you feel?" She still had her neat short hair, just like before, but she was now wearing an Air Force pilot's combat suit. Nina North had ultimately chosen the path she wanted. Stella opened her mouth, her voice incredibly hoarse. "How is he?" Nina North frowned slightly and sat on the edge of the bed, holding her hand. "Still in a coma, not out of danger yet." The situation was critical. Stella had no time to process the shock. After the explosion, the impact injuries weren't too severe, but she still had symptoms of chest pain and coughing up blood. Hearing that Gordon Graham was still unconscious, she forced herself to sit up from the hospital bed. Nina North didn't stop her, just stood beside her, supporting her, taking most of her body weight. They walked step by step to the outside of Gordon Graham's ward. Through the glass window, they looked at the man inside, intubated and on oxygen. The ward was a sterile environment and visits were not allowed. Stella stood outside the ward, quietly looking in for a while, then murmured after a long time, "Uncle Gordon, you must wake up." With that, she slowly turned around. Supported by Nina North, she slowly left. She didn't see that the moment she turned, Gordon Graham's fingers twitched. His body grew heavier and heavier. Gordon Graham felt an endless darkness enveloping him, trying to drag him into deeper despair. He struggled, concentrating all his strength, desperately swimming upwards, but to no avail. His consciousness grew dimmer, until it was completely stripped away, then he suddenly startled awake. The sound of continuous explosions and sirens filled his ears. His mind was a blank hum. The nearby laboratory was billowing thick smoke, the aftershocks of the explosion rippling outwards. The windows of surrounding residential buildings were shattered. Police cars, fire trucks, formed a long cordon. Gordon Graham got out of the car in a daze, feeling as if his body and soul were not in the same dimension. He watched himself flash his credentials, ignoring everyone's attempts to stop him, and rush past the cordon. His eyes were bloodshot, and he roared hoarsely. My wife is still inside, let me in." "Wife? What wife?" Gordon Graham watched this bizarre dream as an outsider, until he himself pushed aside everyone blocking him, rushed into the ruins, and began moving away the stones, piece by piece. He cried out, his voice hoarse, Stella Sterling, come out, I can explain, we can live a good life, please come out." His eyes were crimson, calling Stella's name, again and again. But no one answered. Gordon Graham watched everything he did, yet a tearing pain came from the depths of his soul. He wanted to rush over, he wanted to ask him. What did he want to explain? Why was Stella his wife? Gordon Graham noticed the silver ring on his ring finger. It was a wedding ring. He was married to Stella. However, in this situation, Gordon Graham couldn't feel happy at all. He was still digging. The bricks and rubble still retained the residual heat of the explosion. The air was filled with a burnt, acrid smell. His 10 fingers were bloody and mangled, but he wouldn't stop for a moment. Stella Sterling? He knelt on the ground, searching inch by inch. Finally, a glint of silver flashed through the mud. He brushed away the dirt and saw a hand, also wearing a silver ring on its ring finger. He seemed to see hope. A crazed joy, like a bursting dam, flooded his face. "Stella, don't be afraid. I'll get you out soon, very soon, hold on." His voice was hoarse, trembling uncontrollably. Ignoring his bleeding fingers, like a drowning man clutching at a lifeline, the rushing current overwhelmed his sanity. He dug faster, his movements almost frantic. However, when he cleared away the last bit of earth, what appeared before him was not the figure he expected, but a solitary hand. A hand that, at 12, had tugged his sleeve and shyly called him Uncle Gordon. A hand that, at 20, had personally put a wedding ring on his finger. A cold hand, devoid of any warmth. A desperate roar echoed over the ruins, resonating with the thunder. Gordon Graham knelt on the ground, tears mixed with rainwater, washing over his heart full of regret and unwillingness. His vision blurred. He hugged the cold, stiff half-arm, his voice filled with an unbearable sorrow and disbelief. Why, Stella? Why? His heart was consumed by remorse. Just moments ago, in his last phone call with Stella, they were still arguing. An hour ago, Gordon Graham, returning from an out-of-province inspection and driving to the hotel, looked at the name, Stella Sterling, repeatedly popping up on his phone. He chose to hang up again and again. He didn't know what she had seen when she came back last time, but she had been sending him many inexplicable text messages recently. Hearing that his mission was over, she immediately called. She usually immersed herself in the research institute, not returning for 10 days or half a month at a time. When she did come back, it was always to argue and cause trouble. Gordon Graham was extremely annoyed, frowning with irritation. Lydia Brighton's children were having their university entrance celebration, and he was rushing to attend. She alone had raised 2 children. It wasn't easy. Every time he finished a mission, he would first go to see the 3 of them, taking extra care of them. After all, they were his fallen comrade's posthumous children. He was obliged to do so. But Stella kept calling, asking if Lydia and he had some relationship, if they were together. Utterly absurd. Always being suspicious. The phone rang again. Gordon Graham answered impatiently, his words immediately accusatory. "Stella Sterling, are your experiments too easy? Do you have so much free time every day to overthink things?" There was a long silence on the other end before Stella's lifeless voice came through. Today was originally Gordon Graham's enlistment anniversary. Stella, her body severely damaged by radiation, had returned home and cooked a table full of his favorite dishes. But he hadn't returned from his mission. Instead, Stella, while tidying up, had seen the photo of a family of 4 in his wallet. "I saw the photo in your wallet with Lydia Brighton, a family of 4. Her 2 children are yours, aren't they? If you like someone else, why did you agree to marry me? You should have told me." Her voice trembled, fragile enough to make one's heart clench. But years of awkward interaction had long made them forget how to speak to each other properly. "What nonsense are you talking about? Is there anything else? If not, I'm hanging up." Gordon Graham gripped the steering wheel, impatience spreading in his heart. But Stella, uncharacteristically, didn't obey. Instead, she urgently wanted to clarify things. "Tell me, are her children yours? I haven't had children for so many years. You..." Her voice was clearly choked with sobs. But Gordon Graham felt these words were like a slap in his face. "Why did I marry you? Wasn't it you who insisted on marrying me? I really don't know what unreasonable fuss you're making now. Don't go spreading rumors, ruining Lydia's reputation." His emotions grew more intense, but a loud bang shattered all words. A bang! The communication signal cut off, and the phone screen instantly went dark. Gordon Graham slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching sharply. Looking up, he saw thick smoke rising from a nearby cluster of buildings, the firelight tinting half the sky red. An explosion, a sharp pain shot through his heart, as if an invisible hand had clenched it tightly. At this moment, everything in his mind was swept away, leaving only one thought: he had to see Stella Sterling. Immediately, right now unfortunately, he was still a step too late. His body stood like a sculpture in the ruins, as if a gust of wind could turn him to dust, yet also as if after enduring 100 years of wind, frost, rain, and snow, he would still be there, unchanged. Ring, ring, ring. The jarring ringing of his phone awakened his muddled consciousness. He mechanically pulled his phone from his pocket. At this moment, he desperately wished the caller's name was Stella Sterling. Unfortunately, it wasn't. The call connected, and Lydia Brighton's gentle voice came through the receiver. "Son, come quickly, your father answered the phone." Then, the distinctive grating voice of a teenage boy going through puberty came from the other end of the line. Filled with a hint of indignant frustration, "Dad, why aren't you here yet? Today is my university entrance celebration. Is it that woman again, not letting you come? I hate her. When are you going to divorce her and come home?" When his comrade sacrificed his life, Lydia Brighton's child was already full term. Worried that the child would lack a father's love, a complete childhood, and a sound personality, she had begged Gordon Graham to pretend to be their father in front of the child. This pretense lasted for over a dozen years. The fake became real, and the real also became fake. For the first time, he felt disgust for the child he had doted on. "Shut up, you're not qualified." With that, he hung up the phone. The rescue work continued for a whole day and night. The collected limbs and body parts couldn't form a complete body. Gordon Graham stared blankly, like a soulless puppet. He could never have imagined that Stella Sterling would leave him in this way. Even at the end of her life, they hadn't had a chance to speak properly. How could he not regret it? How could he not be sad? That was the girl he had loved his whole life and also harmed his whole life. He silently removed the ring from that hand and wore it on his little finger. The ward, Gordon Graham's monitoring equipment, suddenly emitted a rapid alarm. Doctors and nurses rushed into the ward. Stella, supported by Nina, leaned against the wall and hurried out, but could only watch anxiously from outside the ward. The external defibrillator rose and fell repeatedly. Gordon Graham's body arched upwards, then fell heavily back onto the bed. Everyone inside and outside the ward held their breath for him. Finally, through the unremitting efforts of the medical staff, his heartbeat returned to normal. The moment he opened his eyes, he turned his head towards the glass window. His gaze locked directly onto Stella. He opened his mouth and silently mouthed, "I'm sorry." Stella's hand, pressed against the wall, suddenly tightened. That one look held too much sorrow. Stella couldn't understand it. After the successful resuscitation that day, Gordon Graham's condition improved day by day. Once Stella recovered, she was discharged early and returned to her work. Thus, by the time Gordon Graham could get out of bed and move around, Stella was long gone from the hospital. He limped on a leg burned by the explosion flames, looking at the empty ward, his eyes filled with disappointment. He stood there for a long time before returning to his own room. It was within his expectations that Stella wouldn't come to see him. He also didn't call to disturb her. Most of the time, he contemplated whether he should see her at all. While there was no news from Stella, Lydia Brighton's call came through. "Gordon, I heard you were injured. How are you now? Do you want me to come take care of you?" Gordon Graham stood by the public telephone in the hospital corridor, frowning. He waited for Lydia Brighton to finish speaking before abruptly saying, "Our operations are all classified. How did you know I was injured?" Lydia Brighton, on the other end, clearly hadn't expected him to ask this. She paused for a moment before continuing, "Gordon, don't be angry. I was just worried about you, so I asked your comrades." "Which comrade?" Lydia Brighton mumbled a name. Gordon Graham nodded. "All right, I understand. Your actions are suspected of being illegal. This call is recorded. I will report this to the organization based on this evidence." With that, he ignored Lydia Brighton's pleas and explanations and hung up the phone directly. Before Gordon Graham was discharged and returned, he applied to see Stella Sterling once. This time, Stella did not refuse. She and Gordon Graham sat facing each other, in silence, like old friends reunited after a long separation, with a sense of nostalgia, yet also like friends who knew each other only superficially, polite and distant. After a long silence, it was Gordon Graham who broke it first. "Stella, you've changed a lot." Stella looked at him quietly, a hint of understanding in her eyes. "It really is you." A simple sentence, yet it shook Gordon Graham to the core. He opened his mouth, his gaze trembling, then, as if understanding something, he gave a bitter smile and lowered his head. "So that's how it was. That's why you decided to go to the National Defense University, to leave the capital, leave the Graham family, leave me." Stella picked up her enamel mug and took a shallow sip. "We've already spent one lifetime testing a flawed equation. If the parameters don't change, the experiment will fail every time, no matter how many times it's repeated. So we had to make a change." Gordon Graham lowered his head, his eyes filled with sorrow. With reddened eyes, he looked at Stella, his gaze clearly filled with turbulent love and reluctance. He choked up, repeating what he had said through the ward glass that day. "Stella, I'm sorry. I should have explained properly to you that day. Lydia Brighton's children are not mine. They are my fallen comrade's posthumous children. I was just helping to take care of them more. It was me who neglected your feelings. Stella put down the enamel mug. The metal clinked against the glass tabletop of the restaurant, making a crisp sound. She said, "Uncle Gordon, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore." More than Stella resenting him or blaming him, he feared this sentence. It doesn't matter anymore. She had let go. It meant that all the good, the bad, the bitter hardships, or sweet memories were all written off by her, completely cleared. This time, he was still a step too late. This is also good. After all, you've seen the future of our country in advance. We can all contribute more to social development. After saying this, Stella stood up to leave. Before she went out, Gordon Graham called out to her. "Will we meet again?" Stella's hand, about to lift the door curtain, paused. She thought for a few seconds, then said with certainty, "Yes, we will meet again." 15 years later. The Capitol National Convention Center. Night had fallen, and the city lights were brilliant. the 2009 National Defense Science and Technology Contribution Award Ceremony, a moment of glory for the unsung heroes of our nation's defense technology sector, slowly began. At the start of the evening, a meticulously produced documentary was played on the big screen, featuring precious historical footage. It not only showcased the development of our nation's defense science and technology capabilities, but also introduced to the wider audience many unsung heroes. At the end of the evening, Stella Sterling, Jackie Reddington, Daisy Shepard, and on the large screen behind them, the last image of Nina North piloting a new type of fighter jet before she heroically crashed into an enemy plane. They had all once been people who carried heavy burdens in the darkness. Some just remained in the darkness forever. 20 years had passed since their distant student days. Crossing the boundaries of time, life, and death, they stood together in the light. At the very end, displayed on the big screen was a short poem written in different handwritings. Dear girl, may you be resilient, may you be spirited. May you bravely break the shackles of convention, your wings unbound. May you grow in adversity, be your own backbone. May you have fire in your heart, light in your eyes, and find your way even in darkness. May you not fear the future, nor be trapped by the past. With ideals as your sail, face the storms of fate. May your life be filled with hope and strength. End.